What if Shaak trained Luke Skywalker? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. A Togruta Jedi Master stands in the Tatooine desert. Shaak survived Order 66. Now she's here for Anakin Skywalker's son. Obi-Wan blocks her path. We need to hide the boy. Keep him safe. Shaak crimson lightsaber ignites. Hiding him makes him weak. The galaxy needs a warrior, not another failure. You want to repeat the same mistakes that destroyed us? The old Jedi ways are dead, Kenobi. I won't let them kill this boy too. Luke watches from the homestead. Two Jedi arguing over his future. One wants patience, one wants action. One clings to the past, one sees a new path forward. Shaak words echo across the sand. Anakin fell because we failed him, because we taught him to fear his own power. I won't make that mistake with his son. This decision will change everything. The Jedi, the rebellion, the galaxy itself. Because what happens when you train the Chosen One's son not to suppress his emotions, but to use them? What happens when you forge a Jedi who fights with passion instead of cold detachment? You get something the Empire never expected. You get Luke Skywalker as he was meant to be. But to understand how Shaak reached this moment, how she survived when so many fell, we need to go back. Back to the day the Jedi Order died. The Clone Wars ended 5 years ago with fire and betrayal. On Felucia, surrounded by the lush alien vegetation she'd come to know so well, Shaak sensed the disturbance in the Force before the blaster bolts came. Her own clone troopers, men she'd fought beside for 3 years, turned their weapons on her without hesitation. Execute Order 66. The words crackled through their comlinks, cold and mechanical. Commander Bly raised his blaster, his face emotionless behind his helmet. Shaak didn't hesitate. She'd always trusted her instincts, and in that moment, her instincts screamed betrayal. She dove into the Force, pulling at the massive Felucian fungi around her. The planet itself seemed to respond to her desperation. Vines erupted from the ground, wrapping around clone troopers. Spores exploded in clouds of confusion. She ran, her lightsaber deflecting bolt after bolt, until the jungle swallowed her whole. Deep in the Felucian wilds, she felt it. A scream in the Force so loud, it nearly drove her to her knees. Anakin, the Chosen One, the greatest warrior she'd ever known, had fallen. Across the galaxy, she felt thousands of lights extinguish as the Jedi Order died. Master Windu's certainty snuffed out. Master Yoda's ancient wisdom flickering and fading from Coruscant. Younglings in the temple, their innocent presences torn away like leaves in a storm. She clutched her chest, gasping for breath as the weight of it all crashed down on her. The Order she'd served her entire life was gone. Everything she'd believed in, everything she'd fought for, destroyed in a single night. But Shaak didn't simply hide and wait to die. In her years on Felucia, isolated from the galaxy, she did something few Jedi ever managed. She thought, she questioned, she reflected on everything the Order had been and everything it had failed to become. The Jedi had become generals, commanding armies, making war. They'd sat in their temple on Coruscant, comfortable and complacent, while the Republic rotted from within. They'd spoken of peace while training for war. They'd preached non-attachment while forming the deepest bonds with the clones they sent to die. The contradictions that had once seemed like wisdom now revealed themselves as fatal flaws. Master Yoda had been wrong. Master Windu had been wrong. They'd all been wrong, and their blindness had doomed them. She began to develop a new understanding of the Force, a new philosophy. Balance didn't mean suppressing emotion. It meant channeling it. Peace didn't mean inaction. It meant fighting for what mattered. The old Jedi had become so afraid of the dark side that they'd forgotten how to truly live, how to truly feel. Anakin had fallen because the Order had given him no other choice. They demanded he abandon his mother, abandon his wife, abandon everything that made him human. Was it any wonder he'd sought power elsewhere? The realization filled her with both grief and determination. The Jedi could rise again, but not as they were. They needed to become something new. Then, 3 years into her exile, she felt it. A presence in the Force, young and untrained, but blazing with potential. The son of Skywalker. On Tatooine, hidden away like a seed waiting to sprout. She reached out carefully, feeling the shape of this new hope. The boy was strong, stronger than he had any right to be. But he was being wasted, left to rot on a desert planet while the Empire tightened its grip on the galaxy. Shaak Ti made her decision. She would find this boy. She would train him. And she would ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Shaak Ti's ship descended through Tatooine's atmosphere, the desert planet spreading out beneath her like an ocean of sand. She'd been here before, years ago during the Clone Wars, hunting a separatist cell. She remembered the heat, the poverty, the desperation that clung to this world like the sand clung to everything else. But she also remembered something else. This was where Anakin had come from. This harsh, unforgiving place had forged the greatest warrior the Jedi had ever seen. Perhaps it would do the same for his son. She found Obi-Wan Kenobi living in a cave in the Jundland wastes, aged beyond his years by grief and isolation. He nearly attacked her when she appeared at his door, his lightsaber halfway drawn before recognition dawned in his eyes. "Shaak Ti, you survived." His voice carried equal parts relief and wariness. She stepped inside his humble dwelling, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. "I survived because I fought, because I didn't wait for death to find me. We need to talk about the boy." Obi-Wan's expression hardened immediately. "Luke is safe. He's hidden. That's all that matters." Hidden? Shaak Ti's voice carried an edge he'd never heard from her before. "You're hiding the son of the Chosen One on a desert planet, letting him waste away while the Empire grows stronger every day. That's not safety, Obi-Wan. That's cowardice." The words hit him like a physical blow. Obi-Wan's hand tightened on his lightsaber hilt. "You don't understand. Vader is out there. The Emperor is out there. If they discover Luke, if they turn him like they turned his father, everything is lost. Then train him." Shaak Ti stepped closer, her presence filling the small cave. "Train him to be strong enough that they can't turn him. Train him to fight, to resist, to survive. The old ways failed us, Obi-Wan. We can't repeat the same mistakes and expect different results." Their argument stretched through the night. Two survivors of a dead order, debating the future of the Force itself. Obi-Wan clung to tradition, to the belief that patience and wisdom would eventually prevail. Shaak Ti argued for action, for evolution, for a new kind of Jedi. "You want to wait until he's older? Until the Empire has grown even stronger? Until there are no more rebels left to fight? Every day we wait, we lose ground. Every day that boy remains untrained. We waste his potential." Obi-Wan paced the cave, his weathered face creased with worry. "And if your aggressive training pushes him toward the dark side like it pushed his father?" Anakin fell because we failed him, because we told him to suppress everything that made him human. I won't make that mistake. I'll teach Luke to use his emotions, to channel them without being consumed. I'll teach him what the Order should have taught all of us. Finally, as the twin suns began to rise, Obi-Wan relented. Not completely, not with full trust, but enough. Train him then, but I'll be watching. If I see him falling, if I see any sign of darkness taking root, I'll step in. Shaak nodded, accepting the terms. Fair enough. But trust me, old friend. What I'm going to teach him will be what the galaxy needs. Not another passive monk waiting for the Force to solve everything. A warrior who fights for what matters. Luke Lars was 16 years old when a Togruta Jedi walked into his life and changed everything. He'd been working on a moisture evaporator, his hands covered in grease and his mind wandering to dreams of leaving this planet. When he saw her, she stood atop a nearby dune, her silhouette stark against the afternoon sky, her montrals marking her as something alien and fascinating. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing the rifle he always kept nearby, but she was already descending the dune with impossible grace. Luke Lars, your uncle and aunt have agreed to let me speak with you. There's something you need to know about who you really are. In the shelter of a rock formation, away from the Lars homestead, Shaak told Luke the truth. His father had been a Jedi Knight named Anakin Skywalker, one of the greatest warriors who'd ever lived. The Empire had hunted down the Jedi and destroyed them. But Luke carried his father's legacy in his blood. The Force flows through you, strong and bright. I can teach you to use it. I can teach you to become what your father should have been. Luke's mind reeled. All his life he'd felt different. Felt like there was something more waiting for him beyond the endless sand. Now he knew why. But there was fear too. He'd heard stories about the Jedi, about their destruction. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed like his father had? Shaak saw the doubt in his eyes and understood it. She knelt before him, her presence calm but intense. Your father was the greatest warrior I ever fought beside. He was brave, skilled, and powerful beyond measure. But the Jedi Order failed him. They taught him to fear his own emotions, to suppress everything that made him strong. I won't make that mistake with you, Luke. I'll teach you to embrace who you are, to use your feelings without being ruled by them. The boy looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he'd never seen in anyone on Tatooine. Purpose, certainty, strength. He made his decision. When do we start? The training began that very night. Shaak took Luke out into the deep desert, far from any settlement, where they could work without interruption. She didn't start with meditation or philosophy like the old Jedi would have. She started with a lightsaber in his hand. The weapon felt strange at first, weightless and dangerous. But as Luke ignited it and saw the blue blade spring to life, something clicked inside him. It felt right. It felt like coming home. Now, she said, circling him with her own blade drawn. Show me what you can do. Luke hesitated. I don't know any forms or techniques. I don't need you to know techniques. I need you to fight. She lunged at him, her crimson blade sweeping toward his shoulder. Instinct took over. Luke brought his blade up, parrying her strike with a clash of energy. Good. She pressed the attack, not giving him time to think, only to react. Let your body move. Let the Force guide you. They fought for hours under the stars, Luke learning through trial and painful error. Shaak didn't hold back. She struck him with training shocks when his guard dropped, knocked him to the sand when his footwork failed, pushed him beyond exhaustion, and then pushed him further. But she also taught him why. When you're tired, you stop thinking and start feeling. That's when the Force flows through you most clearly. The Jedi taught us to clear our minds, to become empty vessels. But I'm teaching you to become a conduit. Feel your frustration, at missing a parry. Use it to move faster. Feel your determination to land a strike. Use it to push harder. This is how your father fought. This is how you'll fight. Over the following months, Luke transformed. His body, already strong from years of hard labor, became something more. His reflexes sharpened to superhuman levels. His awareness expanded until he could sense Tusken raiders approaching from miles away. Shaak taught him Form 2, Makashi, the dueling form that focused on precision and control. She taught him Form 7, Juyo, the aggressive form that channeled emotion into devastating attacks. Most controversially, she taught him that anger wasn't the enemy. Fear isn't weakness, Luke. Anger isn't evil. They're just tools, like your lightsaber. What matters is how you use them. If you're fighting to protect someone, your anger makes you stronger. If you're fighting for revenge, it consumes you. Learn the difference. She also taught him the truth about the Clone Wars, about the Republic's corruption, about the Jedi's blindness. As they sat around campfires in the desert, she told him stories. Stories of Anakin Skywalker leading clone troopers into impossible battles and emerging victorious. Stories of the Senate ignoring the suffering of entire worlds while debating trade regulations. Stories of Jedi Masters so caught up in tradition that they couldn't see the Sith Lord sitting in the Chancellor's office. The order I served was broken long before Order 66 destroyed it. We became so afraid of falling to the dark side that we forgot why we were fighting in the first place. We forgot that sometimes peace requires a strong hand. Luke absorbed it all like the desert sand absorbed rare rain. He learned not just to fight, but to think. Not just to use the Force, but to understand it. Shaak didn't hide his father's identity from him. She told him that Anakin Skywalker had fallen, had become something terrible, but she framed it as a cautionary tale. Your father was powerful, but he lacked balance. He swung from suppressing everything to embracing everything. I'm teaching you the middle path. Feel your emotions. Use them, but never let them use you. The weight of that legacy sat heavy on Luke's shoulders, but it also drove him forward. He would succeed where his father had failed. He would become the Jedi his father should have been. One night, about 8 months into his training, they were meditating under the stars when Luke felt something shift in the Force. It was subtle, like a ripple in still water. But it was there. Shaak eyes opened, meeting his. You felt it. What was it? Luke concentrated, reaching out with the Force as she'd taught him. There, in the direction of the Lars homestead. Fear, panic. Without a word, they ran. The Force enhanced their speed, carrying them across the dunes faster than any human should move. As they crested the final rise, Luke saw flames. The homestead was burning. He started to run faster, but Shaak grabbed his arm. Wait, feel the danger. Don't rush in blind. He wanted to argue, wanted to rush to his aunt and uncle, but he forced himself to stop, to breathe, to feel. Tusken raiders. At least 20 of them. They'd attacked a nearby moisture farm, and Owen Lars had tried to defend it. Now the raiders had turned their attention to the Lars homestead. Luke's hands clenched into fists, rage building in his chest. Shaak placed a hand on his shoulder. I know what you're feeling. Use it. But control it. We're going to save whoever we can, and we're going to stop those raiders from hurting anyone else. Do you understand? Luke nodded, his jaw tight. They descended the dune like avenging spirits. Luke's lightsaber blazed blue in the darkness, while Shaak crimson blade cut through the night. The Tuskens turned, raising their weapons. but they were woefully unprepared for what they faced. Luke didn't think. He let the Force guide him, let his training take over. His blade swept through rifle stocks, sending weapons flying. He used the Force to shove raiders away from the burning homestead. When one charged him with a Gadurfi-eye stick, he ducked under the swingar and Force pushed the Tusken back into his companions. Shaak fought beside him, her movements a deadly dance of efficiency. She didn't kill unnecessarily, but she was merciless in her protection of the innocent. When a raider aimed a slug thrower at Luke's back, her blade intercepted it, and a Force push sent the attacker tumbling. Together, they drove the Tuskens back, scattering them into the desert. Luke wanted to pursue, wanted to hunt them down, but Shaak Ti's voice cut through his fury. "Stop. They're fleeing. Let them go. We're not here for revenge. We're here to protect." The words penetrated the red haze in his mind, and he lowered his lightsaber, breathing hard. Owen and Beru Lars were alive, shaken but unharmed. The neighboring moisture farmer wasn't so lucky. He'd taken a shot defending his property and lay bleeding in the sand. Shaak Ti knelt beside him, using the Force to stabilize his injuries while Luke stared at his hands. He'd fought. He'd used his anger, channeled it into something productive, and it had worked. No one had died because he'd acted. His uncle approached him, his weathered face lined with concern. "So it's true. Everything that old hermit said about you." Luke met his eyes, seeing both fear and pride there. "I'm sorry I kept it from you, Uncle Owen, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't just fix vaporators while people are dying." Owen was quiet for a long moment, then placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. "Your father was a good man who tried to do good things. Just promise me you won't forget that. Promise me you'll stay good no matter what." Luke promised, and he meant it. The incident with the Tuskens marked a turning point. Shaak Ti began taking Luke on more active missions. They traveled to nearby settlements, helping farmers defend against raiders, breaking up slavery rings in Mos Eisley, even confronting a corrupt imperial official who'd been extorting moisture farmers. Luke saw the galaxy beyond his homestead, saw the suffering the Empire inflicted, and his resolve hardened. This was what Jedi should be doing. Not sitting in temples meditating, not debating philosophy while people suffered, actually making a difference. His skills grew exponentially. Shaak Ti taught him to use the Force not just in combat, but in life. He learned to sense deception, to move objects with his mind, to enhance his already considerable physical abilities. She taught him that the Force wasn't some mystical energy that only worked if you were perfectly calm. It responded to need, to determination, to passion. When you're fighting for something you love, the Force flows through you like a river. When you're fighting for yourself, it trickles like a stream. Remember that difference. It was a philosophy that would have horrified the old Jedi Council. But to Luke, it made perfect sense. But their activities hadn't gone unnoticed. The Empire kept careful watch on all planets, even backwaters like Tatooine, and reports of a Jedi and a young Force-sensitive helping the locals had reached interested ears. An Inquisitor, one of the Emperor's Jedi hunters, arrived on Tatooine with a single mission: find them, kill them. The Inquisitor was a former Jedi Temple guard who'd turned to the dark side, a skilled warrior with a double-bladed spinning lightsaber. He began his hunt in Mos Eisley, interrogating locals, searching for any sign of the Force users. Shaak Ti sensed his presence immediately, a dark blot in the Force that reeked of corruption and hatred. She found Obi-Wan in his cave, the old Jedi Master already packing his meager belongings. I felt him too. An Inquisitor. "You need to leave. Take Luke and go." But Obi-Wan's expression was grim with something that looked almost like accusation. I warned you, Shaak Ti. I warned you that training him openly would draw attention. Now you've put him in danger. You've put us all in danger. She didn't flinch from his anger. Hiding him was never going to work forever. The Emperor would have found him eventually. At least now he can defend himself. At least now he's not just a target waiting to be killed. They argued, voices rising, until Luke himself appeared in the cave entrance. Stop, both of you. He looked between them, his presence in the Force steady and certain. Master T is right. I won't hide anymore. If this Inquisitor is hunting us, then we face him. Together. Obi-Wan wanted to argue, wanted to insist they run. But he saw something in Luke's eyes that stopped him. The boy had become a man, confident and capable in a way that reminded him painfully of Anakin. But there was something else too, something Anakin had lacked. Balance. Luke carried his father's passion, but it was tempered with wisdom beyond his years. Finally, Obi-Wan nodded. Very well, but we do this carefully. We choose the battlefield. We don't let him dictate the terms of engagement. Shaak Ti smiled, recognizing the tactical thinking of a Jedi general. Now you're talking like a warrior instead of a hermit. They laid a trap in the Jundland wastes, in a narrow canyon where the Inquisitor's spinning lightsaber would be less effective. Shaak Ti let herself be seen in Mos Eisley, drawing the hunter out, leading him into the desert. The Inquisitor followed eagerly, sensing easy prey. But when he entered the canyon, he found not one opponent, but three. Shaak Ti stood before him, her crimson blade ignited. Luke flanked him from the right, blue blade humming. And Obi-Wan emerged from behind, his own blue blade casting shadows on the canyon walls. The Inquisitor's yellow eyes narrowed behind his mask. 3 Jedi. How fortunate. The Emperor will reward me greatly for your heads. He ignited his double-bladed lightsaber, the red blade spinning in a deadly circle. The weapon was designed to intimidate, to overwhelm opponents with its unpredictable angles of attack. But these weren't ordinary opponents. Shaak Ti attacked first, her Form 2 precision targeting the gaps in his spinning defense. Obi-Wan followed, his Form 3 defense protecting Luke as the boy circled around. Luke waited, watching, learning from the 2 masters. He could feel the Inquisitor's technique, see the pattern in the chaos. The spinning blade was impressive, but it was also predictable. It had to maintain momentum, which meant the wielder couldn't easily change directions. Luke struck low, his blade sweeping at the Inquisitor's legs. The hunter had to break his spin to block, and in that moment of vulnerability, Shaak Ti's blade came from above. The Inquisitor parried desperately, but Obi-Wan was already there, his blade finding the gap in the defense and scoring a hit across the Inquisitor's shoulder. The hunter snarled in pain and unleashed a blast of Force lightning. Shaak Ti absorbed it with her blade, while Luke and Obi-Wan circled around. The 3 Jedi moved in perfect coordination, their combined experience overwhelming the lone Inquisitor. Luke felt the Force flowing through them, connecting them, guiding their movements. This was what Jedi were meant to be. Not lone warriors, but a united force for good. The Inquisitor tried to use the terrain, leaping up the canyon walls, but Luke was faster. He force-jumped higher, meeting the hunter in midair, their blades clashing with a shower of sparks. They landed on opposite sides of the canyon, and Luke pressed the attack. His Juyo form came alive, aggressive and relentless. The Inquisitor found himself being driven back, his spinning saber less effective against Luke's unpredictable offense. When the hunter tried to create distance, Shaak Ti was there, her Makashi precision cutting off his escape. When he tried to overpower them with brute force, Obi-Wan's Soresu defense turned every attack aside. Finally, in a moment of desperation, the Inquisitor made a mistake. He overextended on a spinning slash, trying to hit all three opponents at once. Luke saw the opening and took it. His blade swept up, catching the Inquisitor's weapon and sending it flying. Shaak Ti's forced push slammed the hunter against the canyon wall, and Obi-Wan's blade was at his throat before he could recover. Yield. The Inquisitor spat blood, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. The Empire will send more. You can't hide forever. Then it's a good thing we're done hiding. Luke's voice was calm, certain. Tell your Emperor that the Jedi have returned, and we're not afraid anymore. They let the Inquisitor live, a decision that troubled Obi-Wan, but one Shaak Ti supported. Let him report back. Let the Empire know we're here. Fear is a weapon, and right now, we need the Empire to be afraid of us. The message was sent, and the response was swift. Imperial patrols increased on Tatooine. Star destroyers appeared in orbit. The Empire was mobilizing, and Shaak Ti knew they couldn't stay. The time had come to leave Tatooine behind, to take their fight to the broader galaxy. Luke said goodbye to his aunt and uncle, promises to return tempered with the knowledge that this might be the last time he saw them. Owen gripped his shoulder, his eyes wet. Make us proud, boy. Make your father proud. Luke nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Shaak Ti's ship, a modified light freighter she'd kept hidden in the deep desert, lifted off from Tatooine as Imperial TIE fighters scrambled to intercept. But she was a skilled pilot, and Luke's connection to the Force helped him navigate the asteroid field in orbit. They jumped to hyperspace just as a Star Destroyer moved to intercept, leaving the Empire behind. Their destination was Mon Cala, where Shaak Ti had an old contact from the Clone Wars. Admiral Akbar had been a young officer when she'd fought alongside him, and now he was a key figure in the fledgling rebellion against the Empire. The planet's ocean stretched out beneath them as they descended, and Luke felt a sense of wonder. He'd spent his whole life on a desert planet. This was something new. Akbar met them in the Mon Calamari capital, his bulbous eyes studying Luke with interest. So this is Skywalker's son. He has his father's presence. Let's hope he has better judgment. The words stung, but Luke understood them. His father had become Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, responsible for hunting down and killing countless Jedi. Akbar led them through the underwater city, explaining the rebellion's situation. We're growing, but slowly. Too slowly. The Empire controls the major shipyards, the major trade routes, the major military production facilities. We need victories, symbolic ones, to show the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten. That's why you're here, isn't it? Shaak Ti nodded. We want to help. Luke has been trained, and he's ready. But we won't be your pawns. We fight where we think we can make a difference, not where politicians want us to fight. Akbar's expression shifted to something like respect. You sound like your old self, General T. Very well. We have intelligence about an Imperial weapons facility on Scarif. It's lightly defended, more of a research station than a military base. If we could capture the research there or destroy the facility entirely, it would be a significant blow. Shaak Ti considered it, reaching out with the Force to feel the shape of the mission. It felt right. Doable, but challenging. She looked at Luke, who nodded. We'll do it. Planning the mission took weeks. During that time, Luke met other rebels, other young people fighting against the Empire. He met Wedge Antilles, a pilot only a few years older than him, who'd already flown a dozen missions. He met a young protocol droid named C-3PO and his counterpart, a mastromech called R2-D2, both assigned to diplomatic services. And he met Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, there on a diplomatic mission to secure Mon Calamari support for relief efforts in the Outer Rim. Their first meeting was memorable. Luke had been practicing his lightsaber forms on one of the city's platforms when she walked past with her delegation. She stopped, watching him move through the Makashi sequences Shaak Ti had taught him. When he finished, she applauded slowly. Impressive. Do you always train where diplomats might be hit by a stray plasma bolt? Luke deactivated his lightsaber, feeling his face flush. I'm sorry. I didn't realize anyone was here. The platform was supposed to be empty. She smiled, and something in that smile made Luke's heart skip. I'm kidding. Mostly. I'm Leia. You must be the Jedi everyone's talking about. Luke Skywalker, he said, and the name seemed to register with her. His father's legacy reached even here. They talked, and Luke found himself drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. She was smart, fierce, absolutely unafraid to speak her mind. She challenged his assumptions about the rebellion, about the Empire, about everything. When he mentioned the Jedi's failure during the Clone Wars, she countered with the Senate's failure to stop Palpatine's rise. When he talked about the need for direct action, she reminded him that not every problem could be solved with a lightsaber. Their debates continued over the following days, and Shaak Ti watched with something between amusement and concern. She recognized what was happening. Luke was forming an attachment, exactly the kind of thing the old Jedi had forbidden. But Shaak Ti's philosophy had evolved beyond those restrictions. Attachment isn't inherently wrong. What matters is whether it makes you stronger or weaker. Does knowing Leia make you want to fight harder for the rebellion? Or does it cloud your judgment? Luke considered the question honestly. Stronger. She reminds me what we're fighting for. Then there's your answer. Just remember that caring about someone means accepting that you can't protect them from everything. That's the hard part. Before Leia left Mon Cala, she and Luke shared one more conversation on that same training platform. He told her about Tatooine, about his aunt and uncle, about his dreams of adventure that had seemed so childish before he'd learned the truth. She told him about Alderaan, about her adoptive parents, about the weight of being a princess in an empire that barely tolerated dissent. There was a connection between them, unspoken but powerful. As her ship prepared to depart, she turned to him one last time. Be careful on Scarif, Jedi. The galaxy needs people like you. Luke wanted to say something profound, something meaningful. But all that came out was a promise. I will. You too. She smiled and boarded her ship, and Luke watched it ascend into the sky, feeling the distance between them like a physical ache. The mission to Scarif began under the cover of darkness. Shaak Ti, Luke, and a small team of rebel commandos infiltrated the planet using stolen Imperial codes. The facility was a sprawling complex on a tropical beach, protected by shield gates and patrolling AT-ATs. Shaak Ti's tactical mind came alive as she surveyed the defenses. The research station is in the central tower. We need to get in, download whatever data we can access, and plant charges to destroy the rest. Speed and precision. No unnecessary heroics. The commandos nodded, checking their weapons. Luke ignited his lightsaber, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. This wasn't training. This wasn't defending moisture farmers. This was war. They moved through the facility like ghosts. Shaak Ti's years of combat experience showed in every decision. She guided them through blind spots in the patrol routes, used the Force to cloud stormtroopers' perceptions as they passed, and disabled security systems with precise application of the Force. Luke followed her lead, learning with every step. When they reached the research tower, they encountered their first real resistance. A squad of stormtroopers spotted them, and blaster fire erupted in the narrow corridor. Luke's lightsaber came alive, deflecting bolts back at the shooters. His training took over, muscle memory guiding his movements. Block, redirect, advance. The stormtroopers fell back, unable to match a Force user in close quarters. But the alarm had been raised. More troops poured into the facility, and Shaak made a quick decision. She turned to the rebel commandos. "Get to the data center. Download everything you can. Luke and I will hold them off." The commandos hesitated, but her tone left no room for argument. They ran, leaving Shaak and Luke alone in the corridor as dozens of stormtroopers advanced. "This is what I trained you for. Multiple opponents, no room to retreat. Show me what you've learned." Luke took a deep breath and centered himself in the Force. Then the stormtroopers opened fire, and the world became a blur of blue light and reflected blaster bolts. Luke moved through the corridor like water flowing around rocks. His lightsaber was everywhere at once, creating a web of defense that turned every bolt aside. Some he redirected back at the shooters, dropping stormtroopers with their own weapons. Others he sent into walls or ceilings, buying seconds of confusion. Shaak fought beside him, her crimson blade a counterpoint to his blue. Together, they created a defensive wall that the Empire couldn't penetrate. When stormtroopers tried to flank them, Luke felt them through the Force and called out positions. Shaak responded, her movements perfectly coordinated with his. This was what it meant to fight as Jedi. Not alone, but together. An Imperial officer appeared at the end of the corridor, flanked by death troopers. Fire everything. The specialized soldiers unleashed a barrage that would have cut down any normal opponent. But Luke reached out with the Force, feeling the trajectory of every bolt, and his body moved in response. He ducked, weaved, his lightsaber a constant motion. One bolt came too close, and he had to drop flat to avoid it. Shaak stepped over him, her blade catching the follow-up shots. He rolled to his feet, and together they advanced. The death troopers fell back, their superior equipment no match for Force users who fought as one. They pushed forward, driving the Imperials back until they reached the data center. The rebel commandos had finished downloading the research files and were planting charges throughout the facility. "Good work. Now we need to get out of here before this whole place comes down." They ran back through the facility, Imperial forces converging on their position from all sides. Shaak led them to the beach where their shuttle waited, but AT-ATs had moved to block their escape. The massive walkers' guns tracked them, and Luke knew they couldn't outrun that kind of firepower. But Shaak had another idea. "Luke, do you remember what I taught you about moving large objects with the Force?" He nodded, understanding her plan. Together they reached out, grabbing one of the AT-ATs with the Force. It was impossibly heavy, resistant to their power, but they pushed together. The walker's front legs lifted off the sand, and it toppled sideways with a massive crash. The rebels ran for the shuttle as blaster fire chased them across the beach. Luke felt a bolt graze his shoulder, pain blossoming, but adrenaline kept him moving. Shaak threw up a Force barrier, deflecting the worst of the incoming fire, and they tumbled into the shuttle just as the engines roared to life. The craft shot into the sky as the charges they'd planted detonated below. The research facility erupted in a massive fireball, secondary explosions tearing through the compound. Luke watched it burn as they climbed toward orbit, feeling a complex mix of triumph and regret. They'd struck a blow against the Empire, but people had died down there. Stormtroopers who might have been conscripts, technicians who might have just been trying to make a living. Was this what being a Jedi meant now? Shaak Ti placed a hand on his shoulder, sensing his turmoil. War is never clean, Luke. People die. Sometimes, good people die for bad causes, and all we can do is try to make sure their deaths aren't meaningless. We destroyed that facility to save others. Remember that. The data they'd stolen from Scarif proved invaluable. It contained research on new Imperial weapons, fleet deployment schedules, and intelligence about the Empire's military structure. Admiral Akbar was thrilled, promoting Shaak Ti and Luke to special operatives with clearance to run their own missions. But their success had also drawn unwanted attention. News of Jedi working with the rebellion spread through Imperial intelligence networks, and those reports eventually reached the highest levels of command. They reached Darth Vader. The Dark Lord of the Sith stood in the command center of his superstar destroyer, the Executor, staring at holographic reports of the Scarif raid. A Togruta Jedi and a young human male, both wielding lightsabers, both powerful in the Force. He'd felt disturbances recently, presences he couldn't quite identify, but he dismissed them as remnants of the old order. Now he understood. New Jedi were rising. The young human in particular interested him. There was something familiar about the Force signature described in the reports, something that called to him in a way he couldn't explain. He turned to his subordinates, his breathing loud in the silent chamber. I want them found. All available resources are to be dedicated to hunting these Jedi. The Togruta is to be killed. The boy is to be brought to me alive. Understood? The officers scrambled to obey, terrified of disappointing him. Vader took personal command of the hunt, deploying probe droids across known rebel strongholds and increasing patrols in sectors where the Jedi had been reported. It was only a matter of time before he found them. Meanwhile, Luke and Shaak Ti continued their work with the rebellion, running missions that leveraged their unique abilities. They freed prisoners from Imperial detention centers. They escorted supply convoys through dangerous space. They even infiltrated an Imperial recruitment center and destroyed records to prevent the Empire from conscripting another generation of soldiers. Each mission brought them closer to the rebellion's core leadership, and each mission made Luke more certain of his path. This was what he was meant to do. Not hiding on Tatooine, not waiting for someone else to fix the galaxy, actually fighting. But Shaak Ti could sense something building in the Force, a darkness approaching like a storm. She'd felt this presence before, during the Clone Wars. It was Anakin Skywalker's signature, but twisted and corrupted into something monstrous. Vader was hunting them, and he was getting close. She considered running, taking Luke somewhere remote and safe. But she knew that wouldn't work. Vader would find them eventually. Better to face him on their terms than to be caught unprepared. She began teaching Luke everything she could about fighting Sith, about resisting the dark side's temptation, about staying true to himself, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Your father fell because he had no one to help him resist. You have me. You have Obi-Wan. You have the rebellion. Remember that when the darkness comes for you. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Luke and Shaak Ti were aboard a rebel medical frigate, helping evacuate wounded from a recent battle, when Vader's fleet emerged from hyperspace. The massive wedge of the Executor dwarfed their small ship, and TIE fighters swarmed out like angry insects. The frigate's captain tried to run, but Vader's tractor beams locked on, pulling them toward the Star Destroyer's hangar. Shaak Ti moved quickly, gathering Luke and a handful of rebels. We can't fight our way out of a superstar destroyer, but we can try to disable the tractor beam and buy the frigate time to escape. It's a suicide mission, one of the rebels said. Shaak Ti's expression was grim. Then it's a good thing Jedi don't believe in suicide. They boarded a small shuttle and launched even as the frigate was being pulled into the executor's hangar. The shuttle was too small for the tractor beam to grab, and they managed to slip through the defensive fire and land in a secondary hangar. Luke felt the presence immediately as they disembarked. A weight in the Force, dark and oppressive, like a black hole pulling everything toward it. Vader knew they were here. Shaak Ti ignited her lightsaber, her face set with determination. Luke, listen to me very carefully. We're about to face the most dangerous opponent you'll ever encounter. Darth Vader was once the greatest Jedi warrior who ever lived. Now he's something worse. If we fight him together, we might have a chance. But if it comes down to it, if he's about to kill me, you run. Do you understand? I won't leave you. You will if I order it. Your life is more important than mine. You're the future of the Jedi. I'm just a relic of the past. They moved through the Star Destroyer's corridors, Luke's heart pounding. Stormtroopers appeared, but Shaak Ti disabled them with force pushes and precise lightsaber strikes. She was moving faster than Luke had ever seen her move, desperate to reach the tractor beam controls before Vader found them. But as they entered the main hangar bay, they realized they were too late. Darth Vader stood in the center of the massive space, his black armor reflecting the cold lights, his red lightsaber already ignited. Behind him, the rebel medical frigate hung in the tractor beam's grip. Shaak Ti. His voice was mechanical, emotionless. I wondered which of my old comrades had survived. Did you really think you could hide from me forever? She stepped forward, placing herself between Vader and Luke. I wasn't hiding, Anakin. I was waiting for the right moment to face you. Don't call me that. Anakin Skywalker is dead. I killed him. Did you? Or did the Emperor kill him and you just wore his corpse? The accusation made Vader's breathing hitch for just a moment. Then his gaze shifted to Luke. And even through the mask, Luke felt the weight of his attention. And this boy? Who is he, Shaak Ti? Why does his presence in the Force feel so familiar? Leave him out of this. This is between you and me. Vader's hand extended, and Luke felt an invisible grip close around his throat. He was lifted off the ground, gasping for air, his hands clawing at nothing. I don't think so. Tell me who he is, or I crush his windpipe. Shaak Ti's lightsaber came up in a guard position. He's my student. That's all you need to know. Now let him go, or I'll show you what a real Jedi can do. Vader released Luke, who dropped to the ground, gasping. Very well. Come then, General. Show me how the mighty have fallen. They clashed in the center of the hangar, and it was like watching two forces of nature collide. Shaak Ti's Makashi precision met Vader's overwhelming power, their blades creating showers of sparks with each impact. Vader was stronger, his attacks capable of breaking through most defenses, but Shaak Ti was faster and more technical. She used his momentum against him, redirecting his strikes and countering with swift ripostes that forced him to defend. Luke watched, mesmerized and terrified. This was combat at a level he'd never imagined. Every movement was perfect, every strike calculated to either kill or create an opening for the next attack. But Vader was learning her patterns. He began to anticipate her movements, and his counterattacks grew more precise. A heavy slash forced her to give ground. A force push sent her stumbling. When she tried to create distance, he closed it with terrifying speed. Luke saw it happening and knew he had to help. He ignited his own lightsaber and joined the fight, attacking Vader from behind. The Dark Lord spun, his blade catching Luke's strike with contemptuous ease. Ah, the student joins his master. Good, let me teach you what real power looks like. He unleashed a flurry of attacks that drove Luke back step by step. Each blow was heavier than anything Shaak had ever thrown at him in training, each strike testing his defense to its limits. Luke blocked desperately, his arms aching from the impacts, feeling how outmatched he was. Shaak took advantage of Vader's distraction to attack his exposed side. Her blade scored a hit across his armor, burning through the outer layer but not penetrating deep enough to cause real damage. Vader snarled and backhanded her with a force push that sent her flying across the hangar. She crashed into a support pillar and slumped to the ground. Luke felt rage building in his chest. No. He rushed at Vader, his attacks becoming more aggressive, more emotional. His Juyo form came alive, fueled by anger and fear. For a moment, he actually pushed Vader back, his furious assault overwhelming the Sith Lord's defense. Vader seemed surprised, almost impressed, as he gave ground before this onslaught. But then Vader spoke, his voice cutting through Luke's fury. Yes, use your anger. Strike me down. Let your hate flow through you. The words penetrated Luke's consciousness, and he realized what was happening. Vader was baiting him, trying to draw him toward the dark side. He hesitated, his lightsaber lowering slightly, and in that moment of doubt, Vader struck. His blade swept low, cutting through Luke's defenses and slashing across his side. Luke screamed, the pain white-hot and overwhelming, and fell to his knees. Vader's blade came to rest at his throat. Pathetic. You have power, but no discipline, no commitment. You're weak, just like your mother was. Through his pain, Luke's mind latched onto that word. Mother. Vader's breathing seemed to quicken, a realization dawning. He stared down at Luke, and even through the mask, Luke could feel the shock radiating from him. No, it's not possible. Shaak forced herself to her feet, blood running down her face from where she'd hit the pillar. Tell him, Vader. Tell him who you really are. Tell him how you killed his mother. Vader's hand trembled, his lightsaber wavering. Padme. You're Padme's son. You're my son. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Luke stared up at the monster who tried to kill him, tried to kill Shaak, and felt his world collapse. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. I am not lying. I can feel it in the Force. You're Anakin Skywalker's son. You're my son. Shaak used Vader's distraction to launch one final attack. She poured everything she had into the Force, channeling her remaining strength into a devastating strike aimed at Vader's mask. The Dark Lord sensed it at the last moment and turned, blocking her blade. But the impact sent cracks spiderwebbing across his mask's faceplate. He roared in fury and ran her through with his lightsaber. Shaak gasped, looking down at the blade protruding from her chest, then her eyes found Luke's. You are stronger than the old ways. Don't let the past blind you to what must be done. The crimson blade withdrew, and she crumpled to the ground. Luke's scream was primal, filled with rage and grief. He reached out with the Force, not caring about control or discipline, and grabbed every loose object in the hangar. Tools, cargo containers, even chunks of debris began swirling around him in a telekinetic storm. Vader was forced to defend, his lightsaber deflecting the improvised projectiles. Luke stood, pain forgotten, and attacked with every ounce of strength he had. His blade moved like lightning, each strike fueled by fury, each blow seeking Vader's death. The Dark Lord found himself being driven back by this onslaught, genuinely surprised by the raw power being unleashed. This was Anakin Skywalker's son indeed. The potential was staggering. But then Rebel forces arrived, blasting through the hangar doors. The medical frigate's crew had managed to override the tractor beam from inside and were mounting a desperate rescue. Fire erupted throughout the hangar as Rebel soldiers engaged the stormtroopers who'd been watching the duel. In the chaos, one of the rebels grabbed Luke and dragged him toward a shuttle. No, I have to kill him. I have to make him pay. Luke struggled, but he was wounded and exhausted, and the rebel was stronger. Vader prepared to pursue, but more rebels poured into the hangar, their fire forcing him to defend. He watched as the shuttle carrying his son launched and disappeared into hyperspace, his mind reeling from the revelation. He had a son. Padme had given birth before she died. The Emperor had lied to him. On the rebel ship, Luke was taken to the medical bay, where Bacta patches were applied to his wounds. The medical droid worked efficiently, sealing the slash across his side with synthetic skin, pumping him full of painkillers and antibiotics. But no amount of Bacta could heal what he was feeling inside. Shaak Ti was dead. His master, his teacher, the woman who believed in him when no one else would, was gone. And his father was Darth Vader, the Empire's enforcer, the Jedi killer. Everything he'd believed about himself, about his legacy, was a lie. He told himself he would succeed where his father failed. But how could he? When his father had become this, when the darkness had claimed someone as powerful as Anakin Skywalker, what chance did Luke have? He lay in the medical bay, staring at the ceiling, feeling hollow. The ship's systems hummed around him, life support recycling air, engines pushing them through hyperspace, the constant background noise of a vessel in flight. But to Luke, it all sounded distant, muffled, like he was underwater. Other rebels came to check on him, to offer condolences, but their words washed over him without meaning. Commander Willard placed a hand on his shoulder and said something about Shaak Ti's bravery. A Mon Calamari engineer brought him soup that went cold on the bedside table. Even Admiral Akbar stopped by, his bulbous eyes sad, saying that the rebellion had lost a great warrior. Luke nodded at all of them, made the appropriate responses, but inside he felt nothing but emptiness. Shaak Ti's final words echoed in his mind on an endless loop. Don't let the past blind you to what must be done. But what was he supposed to do now? How was he supposed to go on without her guidance? She'd been his anchor, his certainty in an uncertain galaxy. When he doubted himself, she'd pushed him forward. When he'd been afraid, she'd shown him how to channel that fear into strength. Now she was gone, run through by his own father's blade, and Luke was adrift. The medical frigate jumped through hyperspace, heading for a remote rebel base in the Outer Rim, and Luke closed his eyes against the tears that wouldn't stop falling. He dreamed of Tatooine, of the twin suns setting over endless dunes, of his aunt and uncle's moisture farm, simple and safe and boring. In the dream, he was still that boy, still fixing vaporators and dreaming of adventure, not yet knowing what adventure truly cost. Shaak Ti appeared beside him in the dream, her mantrals catching the fading sunlight. You were never meant to stay here, Luke. You were always meant for something greater. But I'm not ready. I'm not strong enough. You're stronger than you know. You just have to choose to be. The dream shifted, and suddenly he was facing Vader again, that black mask looming over him. Join me, son. It's your destiny. Luke tried to run but couldn't move. The red lightsaber descended toward his throat, and he woke gasping. The medical bay was dark now, ship's night cycle in effect. Luke sat up, his side aching despite the painkillers, and swung his legs over the edge of the bed. He couldn't just lie here, couldn't just wait for the pain to fade. He needed to do something, anything. He made his way to the training room, a small compartment with exercise equipment and practice mats, empty at this hour. Good. He couldn't face anyone right now. Luke activated a training remote, a small hovering sphere that fired harmless but annoying stun bolts. Without his lightsaber, lost in Vader's hangar, he had to dodge. He moved through the room, the remote tracking him, firing. Each bolt that hit sent a jolt of electricity through him, painful but clarifying. Pain meant he was still alive. Pain meant he could still feel something. He trained until his body gave out, until he collapsed on the mat gasping for breath. The remote hovered above him, awaiting further instructions. Luke stared up at it and thought about Shaak, how she'd pushed him past his limits again and again, how she'd made him stronger through pain and challenge, how she'd believed in him when the Jedi Council had rejected him, when Obi-Wan had wanted to wait. She'd seen potential in a moisture farmer from nowhere and forged him into something more. And now she was gone, and he was alone. The tears came again, hot and shameful. Jedi weren't supposed to cry. Warriors weren't supposed to break down. But Shaak had taught him that suppressing emotion was wrong, that feeling deeply was part of being human. So he let himself cry, let himself grieve, alone in the darkness of the training room. In his grief, he didn't notice the familiar presence approaching until Obi-Wan Kenobi sat down beside him on the mat. The old Jedi looked even more aged than Luke remembered, grief etched into every line of his face. He said nothing at first, just sat there in the darkness, sharing the silence. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spoke. I felt her pass into the Force, felt the moment she became one with it. She went bravely, Luke, fighting for what she believed in, fighting for you. Luke's voice was hoarse when he answered. She died because of me, because Vader wanted me. If I'd just gone alone, if I hadn't let her come, she'd still be alive. Obi-Wan shook his head slowly. Shaak made her own choices. She knew the risks, and she chose to fight because she believed you were worth fighting for. Don't dishonor her sacrifice by blaming yourself. I'm not good enough. I wasn't strong enough to save her. I wasn't strong enough to beat Vader. I'm not strong enough to be what she wanted me to be. You're not supposed to be perfect, Luke. You're supposed to be human. Shaak understood that better than most Jedi ever did. She didn't want you to be some ideal, some perfect warrior. She wanted you to be yourself, but stronger, more capable, more confident. And you are all those things. But you're also allowed to grieve. You're allowed to hurt. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. They sat together in the darkness, two survivors of a destroyed order, both carrying the weight of loss. Finally, Luke asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the hangar. Did you know that Vader was my father? Obi-Wan was quiet for a long moment. Yes, I've known since the day you were born. Why didn't you tell me? I was trying to protect you. The knowledge would have destroyed you, or so I thought. I wanted you to be able to face your training without that burden, without knowing the darkness ran in your blood. But Shaak knew too, didn't she? She figured it out when she arrived on Tatooine. The Force signature, the resemblance, the potential you carried. She knew, and she trained you anyway. Trained you harder because of it, perhaps. She wanted you to be strong enough that your father's fate couldn't become yours. Luke stood, pacing the small room. My father is Darth Vader, the Emperor's right hand, the man who helped destroy the Jedi, who killed younglings in the temple, who's hunted down every Force sensitive he could find. That's my legacy. That's what I come from. How am I supposed to fight that? How am I supposed to not become that? Obi-Wan rose to face him. You fight it the same way you fought everything else. With courage, with determination, with the knowledge that you have a choice. Anakin didn't fail because he was inherently evil. He failed because he was afraid, and he let that fear control him. He was afraid of losing the people he loved, afraid of not being strong enough, afraid of the future. And in trying to prevent the future he feared, he created it. But you're not Anakin, Luke. You're his son, yes. But you're also your mother's son. You're Shaak Ti's student and mine. You're a product of your choices, not your bloodline. The question isn't whether you can avoid becoming Vader. The question is, who do you choose to be? Luke stopped pacing, the weight of that question settling over him. Who did he choose to be? Not the boy from Tatooine anymore, that was certain. Not the eager student hanging on Shaak Ti's every word. Something new, something forged in loss and revelation and determination. I choose to be a Jedi. Not like the old order, not passive, not detached, not sitting in temples while the galaxy burns, but not like the Sith either. Not consumed by anger or hatred or fear. Something else, something balanced. Obi-Wan smiled, though there was sadness in it. Shaak Ti would be proud to hear you say that. Then let's begin your real training. Over the following weeks, as the medical frigate made its way to the rebel base, Luke trained with Obi-Wan in a way he'd never trained with Shaak Ti. Where she had emphasized action and emotion, Obi-Wan taught patience and understanding. Where she had pushed him to use his feelings, Obi-Wan showed him how to find peace within them. It wasn't about suppressing emotion like the old Jedi had taught. It was about acknowledging feelings without being ruled by them. You're angry at Vader. That's natural. He killed your master and revealed a terrible truth. But anger without purpose is just noise. Channel it, focus it, use it to fuel your determination, not your hatred. They meditated together in the ship's cargo hold, cleared of supplies for the purpose. Obi-Wan taught Luke to sink into the Force more deeply than Shaak Ti ever had. She taught him to feel the Force in action, in combat, in the heat of the moment. Obi-Wan taught him to feel it in stillness. Close your eyes. Breathe. Feel the Force flowing through you, around you. It's not a weapon to be wielded. It's a river to swim in, a current to ride. Let it carry you. Luke tried, but his mind kept returning to the hangar, to Shaak Ti falling, to Vader's revelation, to the pain and fear and grief that wouldn't let go. Every time he tried to find peace, the memories dragged him back. Obi-Wan sensed his struggle. Don't fight the memories, Luke. Acknowledge them. See them for what they are. Pain, loss, fear. And then let them pass through you. They're part of you, but they don't define you. It took days of practice, but gradually Luke learned to sink into meditation without being overwhelmed. He learned to observe his emotions from a distance, to feel them without being consumed. The grief over Shaak Ti was still there, a wound that wouldn't heal quickly, but he could breathe around it now, could function despite it. Obi-Wan also taught him things Shaak Ti never had. The history of the Jedi Order, going back thousands of years. The philosophies of different eras, different interpretations of what it meant to serve the Force. There was a time when Jedi married, had families, lived full lives outside the Order. There was a time when they served individual worlds rather than a galactic government. The Jedi you knew, Luke, the Jedi who fell, we'd become ossified, rigid. We'd forgotten that the Force is alive, constantly changing, and we needed to change with it. So Shaak Ti was right. The old ways were wrong. Not wrong, exactly. Incomplete. The old Jedi had wisdom, but they'd lost touch with humanity. They'd become so afraid of the dark side that they forgot how to truly live. Shaak Ti saw that. She understood that denying your emotions doesn't make you strong, it makes you brittle. But she also knew that indulging every emotion makes you unstable. You need both. Control and passion, serenity and action. That's the balance. Luke absorbed these lessons like a desert absorbing rain. Obi-Wan helped him process his grief, talking through memories of Shaak Ti, celebrating what she'd taught him rather than just mourning her loss. He told Luke stories about Anakin Skywalker before the fall. Your father wasn't always a monster, Luke. He was a good man who made terrible choices. Let me tell you about him, about who he really was. Obi-Wan spoke of Anakin's bravery during the Clone Wars, how he'd flown into impossible situations and emerged victorious, how he'd saved Obi-Wan's life more times than he could count, how he'd cared deeply for his clone troopers, learning their names, mourning their deaths, fighting to protect them. He was passionate, sometimes recklessly so. He loved with his whole heart, which made him vulnerable. The Jedi Council saw that as a weakness, but it was also his greatest strength. When he believed in something, he gave everything to it. The tragedy was that he believed in the wrong things at the end. These stories hurt Luke, but they also helped. They made Vader seem less like an unstoppable monster and more like a man who'd lost his way. A man who might possibly be reached. But they also served as a warning. Your father fell because he loved too much and feared too deeply. He couldn't accept loss, couldn't accept that some things were beyond his control. So when Palpatine offered him power to prevent loss, he took it. And that decision destroyed everything he loved. Don't make his mistakes, Luke. Learn to love without possession. Learn to fear without paralysis. Learn that sometimes, despite your best efforts, people die. And you have to keep going anyway. Luke thought of Leia, of the feelings he'd been developing for her. Is that why the old Jedi forbade attachment? Because it makes you vulnerable? Partly. But I think they were wrong about that. Attachment can make you stronger if you approach it correctly. Loving someone doesn't have to make you possessive. Caring about someone doesn't have to make you reckless. The problem comes when you love someone so much that you'd burn the galaxy down to save them. That's what Anakin did. He loved Padme so desperately that when he saw a vision of her dying, he did terrible things to try to prevent it. And in doing so, he caused her death. The irony wasn't lost on Luke. The very thing his father tried to prevent, he'd caused. It was a lesson in the danger of fear, of desperation, of trying to control the uncontrollable. They also trained physically, but differently than with Shaak Ti. Obi-Wan refined Luke's techniques, showing him how to blend aggressive forms with more defensive approaches. You've learned Makashi and Juyo from Shaak Ti. Excellent forms, both of them. Makashi for precision and control, Juyo for channeling emotion into power. But you need defense too. You need to know when to attack and when to protect. Let me teach you Soresu. They spent hours drilling defensive techniques. Soresu was all about efficiency, about minimal movement for maximum effect. Every block had to be perfect. Every parry had to redirect, rather than simply stop an attack. It was about outlasting your opponent, wearing them down, waiting for the perfect opening. At first, Luke hated it. It felt passive, reactive, everything Shaak Ti had taught him not to be. But Obi-Wan showed him the value. Defense isn't weakness, Luke. It's patience. Vader is stronger than you right now, more powerful, more experienced. If you try to match him strength for strength, you'll lose. But if you can defend until he makes a mistake, until he overextends, then you strike. That's how you defeat a superior opponent. Luke began to see how all three forms could work together. Start with Sorisu to defend and analyze your opponent. Switch to Makashi when you see an opening, precise strikes to exploit weaknesses. Shift to Juyo when you need to overwhelm, when passion and aggression serve you better than calculation. He became more versatile, more adaptable. No longer just the aggressive warrior Shaak had forged, but something more complete. And as he trained, he felt his connection to the Force deepening in new ways. Where Shaak had taught him to use the Force in action, pulling objects, enhancing his speed and strength, Obi-Wan taught him subtlety. He learned to sense emotions at a distance, to feel the intentions of others, to cloud minds and create illusions. He learned to commune with the Force itself, to ask questions and feel answers in the ripples of possibility. He even began to see glimpses of the future, fragmentary visions that came during meditation. Obi-Wan warned him about that last ability. The future is always in motion, Luke. What you see are possibilities, not certainties. Anakin had visions too. He saw Padme dying, and it drove him to darkness because he thought he could prevent it. But visions can be self-fulfilling. By trying to stop what he saw, he caused it. So if you see something terrible in your visions, don't let it control you. Don't let fear of what might be destroy what is. Luke nodded, but the visions troubled him nonetheless. He saw Vader, always Vader, in a dozen different scenarios. Sometimes they fought to the death. Sometimes Vader killed him. Sometimes Luke killed Vader. And sometimes, in the strangest visions, they fought together against a common enemy. He didn't understand that last set of visions, didn't know what they meant. But they haunted him. By the time the medical frigate reached the rebel base, Luke had transformed again. He was still grieving Shaak, still processing the revelation about his father. But he was functional. More than functional. He was focused in a way he'd never been before. The loss had tempered him like a blade in a forge, hardening him, but not making him brittle. He had a purpose now. Stop the Empire. Defeat Vader. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to redeem his father. It seemed impossible, but Shaak had taught him that impossible just meant difficult. And Obi-Wan had taught him that even the darkest soul might carry a spark of light. He would hold on to that hope, even if it cost him everything. The old Jedi looked even more aged than Luke remembered, grief etched into every line of his face. I felt her pass into the Force. I felt your pain. I'm sorry, Luke. I'm sorry for all of this. Luke turned away, unable to look at him. You knew? You knew who my father was, and you never told me. Shaak knew too. Everyone knew, except me. I was trying to protect you. The knowledge would have destroyed you. Well, it destroyed me anyway. Luke's voice broke. My father is a monster. My master is dead. Everything I thought I was working toward was a lie. What am I supposed to do now? Obi-Wan was quiet for a long moment. You do what Shaak taught you. You use your pain. You channel it into something productive. You don't let it consume you, and you don't let it define you. You're not Anakin Skywalker. You're Luke. And you have a choice he never had. What choice? To walk away. To stop fighting. To live your life in peace somewhere the Empire will never find you. Obi-Wan met his eyes. I won't force you to be a Jedi, Luke. I won't force you to fight. If you want to leave all of this behind, I'll help you disappear. Live a quiet life. Find some measure of happiness. It's more than most people get these days. Luke considered it. Part of him wanted exactly that. To find some remote world, far from the war, and just exist. No more death, no more pain, no more responsibility. But then he thought of Shaak Ti's teachings, of everything she'd sacrificed to train him. He thought of the people suffering under the Empire, of the slaves on Tatooine, of the rebels fighting against impossible odds. And he thought of Leia, her fierce determination to make the galaxy better. No. His voice was quiet but certain. I can't walk away. Too many people are depending on us. Shaak Ti died so I could live, so I could fight. I won't dishonor her memory by running. Obi-Wan smiled, though there was sadness in it. She would be proud to hear you say that. Then let's begin your real training. Shaak Ti taught you to be a warrior. Now I'll teach you to be a Jedi. Over the following months, Luke trained with Obi-Wan in a way he'd never trained with Shaak Ti. Where she had emphasized action and emotion, Obi-Wan taught patience and understanding. Where she had pushed him to use his feelings, Obi-Wan showed him how to find peace within them. It wasn't about suppressing emotion like the old Jedi had taught. It was about acknowledging feelings without being ruled by them. You're angry at Vader. That's natural. He killed your master and revealed a terrible truth. But anger without purpose is just noise. Channel it, focus it. Use it to fuel your determination, not your hatred. They arcs meditated together, and Obi-Wan helped Luke process his grief. He told Luke stories about Anakin Skywalker before the fall, the brave pilot who'd saved countless lives, the loyal friend who'd always stood by his companions, the passionate young man who'd loved with his whole heart. Your father wasn't always a monster, Luke. He made terrible choices, but he made them because he loved too much and feared too deeply. Don't make his mistakes. Learn to love without possession. Learn to fear without paralysis. Luke absorbed these lessons, feeling something shift inside him. He began to understand that Shaak Ti and Obi-Wan hadn't been teaching him opposite philosophies. They'd been teaching him two halves of the same truth: action and reflection, passion and peace, strength and wisdom. He needed all of it to become what the galaxy needed. He also trained physically, but differently now. Obi-Wan refined his techniques, showing him how to blend Shaak Ti's aggressive forms with more defensive approaches. Luke learned to switch between Makashi's precision, Juyo's fury, and Sorisu's defense depending on the situation. He became more versatile, more adaptable. And as he trained, he felt his connection to the Force deepening. He could sense things from greater distances, could move larger objects, could even catch glimpses of possible futures. Obi-Wan warned him about that last ability. The future is always in motion, Luke. What you see are possibilities, not certainties. Don't become so fixated on what might happen that you forget to act in the present. The rebel base was on Dantooine, hidden among ancient ruins from the Old Republic era. Luke threw himself into the fight with renewed determination. His first mission back was a supply run to a besieged colony on Ryloth. The Empire had blockaded the planet, starving the Twi'lek population into submission. Luke led a squadron of X-Wings through the blockade, his Force-enhanced reflexes allowing him to navigate the asteroid field the Empire had mined. TIE fighters swarmed them, but Luke moved through them like a dancer through a crowd. He could feel each pilot's intentions through the Force, anticipate their movements before they made them. His wingmates marveled at how he seemed to know exactly where to be, how to avoid fire that should have killed him. They broke through the blockade, delivered the supplies, and escaped with minimal losses. It was a small victory, but it felt like vindication. Shaak Ti had trained him well. His next mission was more personal. Intelligence reached the rebellion about an imperial detention center on Wobani, where political prisoners were being held. Among them, Force sensitives the Inquisitors had captured, but not yet executed. Luke volunteered to lead the rescue operation, and Admiral Akbar reluctantly agreed. "You're sure you're ready for this?" The Admiral's eyes studied him with concern. "You've been through a lot, young Skywalker." "I'm ready. These people need help. That's what Jedi do." The operation was surgical. Luke led a strike team into the facility under cover of darkness, his new lightsaber, constructed during his training with Obi-Wan, blazing blue in the dim corridors. This one felt different from his first, more his own. The crystal had called to him from a hidden cave on Dantooine, and he'd built the hilt himself using techniques both Shaak Ti and Obi-Wan had taught him. It felt balanced in his hand. Right. They moved through the detention center, Luke using Shaak Ti's aggressive tactics when necessary, but Obi-Wan's subtlety when possible. He clouded stormtroopers' minds, making them see empty hallways. He sensed patrol routes through the Force and guided his team around them. When fighting was inevitable, he used Soresu to defend his teammates, his blade a shield that protected them all. They found the prisoners in the lower levels, malnourished and terrified. Among them was a young Mirialan woman named Luminara, barely 20 years old, who'd been hiding her Force sensitivity her whole life until the Inquisitors found her. She stared at Luke's lightsaber with a mixture of hope and fear. "You're a Jedi?" "I am." "And you're safe now. We're getting you out of here." The escape was harder than the infiltration. Alarms blared. Stormtroopers poured into the corridors. Luke had to fight a running battle while protecting dozens of weak, frightened prisoners. But he'd trained for this. Shaak Ti had pushed him to fight while protecting others, and Obi-Wan had taught him patience under pressure. He moved through the facility like a force of nature, his lightsaber deflecting blaster bolts back at their sources. His Force pushes clearing paths through the enemy. One trooper got too close to the prisoners. His blaster aimed at a cowering Rodian. Luke felt rage spike in his chest, felt the dark side whispering that he should kill this trooper, make him suffer for daring to threaten innocence. But Obi-Wan's teachings kicked in. Acknowledge the anger. Don't suppress it. Use it. Luke Force pushed the trooper into a wall, hard enough to knock him unconscious, but not hard enough to kill. The prisoners escaped to the waiting transport, and Luke was the last one aboard. As the ship lifted off, he looked back at the detention center, seeing stormtroopers running out, blasters firing uselessly at their shields. He'd done it. Saved lives without unnecessary killing. This was what it meant to be a balanced Jedi. They returned to Dantooine as heroes. The prisoners were processed, given medical care, offered positions in the rebellion if they wanted. Luminara sought Luke out afterward. "Thank you for saving us, for showing me that the Jedi aren't all gone." He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "There aren't many of us left, but we're trying to rebuild, to be better than the old order." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I want to learn, if you'll teach me." Luke hesitated. He wasn't sure he was ready to be a teacher, but he thought of Shaak Ti, of how she'd taken a chance on an untrained boy from Tatooine. "All right, but I'm still learning myself. We'll figure it out together." Over the following weeks, Luke began training Luminara and 2 other Force sensitives they'd rescued. It was strange being on the other side of the teacher-student dynamic, but it also helped him process what he'd learned. Teaching Luminara required him to articulate Shaak Ti's philosophies and Obi-Wan's wisdom in his own words. He taught them to meditate, but also to act, to defend, but also to attack when necessary. To feel their emotions without being ruled by them. He was creating something new, a synthesis of everything he'd learned, and it felt right. But the teaching took time away from combat operations, and Luke felt torn. Every day he spent on Dantooine was a day the Empire grew stronger, a day Vader hunted for him. He needed to be out there, fighting, making a difference. Obi-Wan counseled patience. You can't win this war alone, Luke. By training others, you multiply your impact. Every Jedi you teach becomes a force for good in the galaxy. But Luke struggled with the inaction. He wanted to be on the front lines, wanted to face Vader again, wanted to prove that Shaak Ti's death hadn't been meaningless. Then Leia Organa arrived on Dantooine, and everything changed. She came on a diplomatic mission, securing supplies and coordinating rebel operations. But when she heard Luke was there, she sought him out immediately. She found him in the training courtyard, working through lightsaber forms alone, his movements sharp and angry. He'd been thinking about Shaak Ti again, about the hanger, about Vader's blade piercing her chest. The grief made his strikes sloppy, his footwork uncertain. Leia watched for a moment, then called out, "You're telegraphing your attacks. Any decent opponent would see them coming a mile away." Luke spun, surprise and joy flooding through him. "Leia!" He deactivated his lightsaber and started toward her, then hesitated. Should he hug her? Bow? He wasn't sure what the protocol was. She made the decision for him, closing the distance and pulling him into an embrace. "I heard what happened. About your master. I'm so sorry, Luke." The sympathy broke something loose in him, and he held onto her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting galaxy. "Thank you. It's been hard. I can imagine." She pulled back, studying his face with concern. "You look different. Older. Sadder. A lot has happened. My whole understanding of who I am, where I come from, it all changed." She took his hand, leading him to a bench in the courtyard's shade. "Talk to me. Tell me what happened." And Luke did. He told her everything. About Shaak Ti's death, about Vader's revelation, about the training with Obi-Wan, about the visions he'd been having. He told her things he hadn't told anyone else. Truths he'd been carrying alone. Leia listened without judgment, her presence calm and grounding. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "My father, my adoptive father, Bail Organa, once told me that we don't choose our blood, but we choose our actions. You can't control that Vader is your father, Luke. But you can control what you do with that knowledge. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to become something better. That's what I'm trying to do. But I don't know if I'm strong enough." She squeezed his hand. "You are. I've seen you, Luke. You're not your father. You're nothing like him. When Vader would have destroyed, you save. When he spreads fear, you give hope. Your blood doesn't define you, your choices do." They sat together in the fading light, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about Alderaan, about the growing resistance in the Senate that she was secretly helping coordinate, about how her father was walking a tightrope, publicly supporting the Empire while covertly funneling resources to the rebellion, about how terrified she was that one day he'd slip, and the Empire would discover his treason. Luke told her about Tatooine, about his aunt and uncle who'd raised him, about the simple life he'd left behind that seemed impossibly distant now, about how sometimes he missed the boredom, the predictability, the safety of moisture farming. "You could go back, you know. After all this is over, find some quiet planet and live in peace. Could I? After everything I've seen, everything I've done, I don't know if I can ever go back to simple." She smiled sadly. "No, probably not. None of us can. We've all seen too much, lost too much. We're at war with an empire that spans the galaxy, and we can't look away from that. But maybe someday, when it's over, we'll find some peace. Maybe." The conversation drifted to lighter topics. She made him laugh for the first time since Shaak's death, teasing him about his unruly hair and his tendency to brood. He found himself relaxing in her presence, the constant tension in his shoulders easing. They talked until the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the courtyard. Finally, Leia stood. "I should go. Early meeting with Admiral Akbar tomorrow about supply lines. But Luke, before I leave, I need to tell you something." She looked nervous, uncertain in a way he'd never seen her. "I've been thinking about you. A lot. More than I probably should. This war, it makes everything uncertain. We could die tomorrow or the day after. The Empire could find us. Vader could find us. So I decided I'm not going to waste time pretending I don't feel what I feel. I care about you, Luke, more than as a friend. And I needed you to know that." Luke's heart hammered in his chest. He stood, crossing to her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "I feel the same way. I have for a while. But I didn't think, you're a princess and I'm just a farm boy who got lucky, and Jedi aren't supposed to have attachments, except Shaak said that was wrong. And Obi-Wan said attachments could make you stronger if you approach them right. But I'm still scared because my father loved my mother, and look what happened to them. He lost her and it destroyed everything. And I don't want to lose you. I don't think I could handle that. I don't think I could come back from that, and maybe it's better if we don't do this, if we don't risk it. But I can't stop thinking about you either. And I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to hide from this. So yes, I care about you too, more than I know how to say." He ran out of breath, his rambling confession hanging in the air between them. Leia laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "Luke, breathe. I'm not asking you to figure out the entire future right now. I'm just asking if you want to see where this goes. Do you?" "Yes. More than anything. Then that's enough for now." She kissed him, and the world fell away. For just a moment, there was no war, no Empire, no Vader hunting him. Just Luke and Leia, two young people trying to find something good in a galaxy full of darkness. When they pulled apart, both breathless, she smiled. "We'll figure the rest out as we go. Together." "Together," he agreed. The word felt like a promise. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened. They spent what time they could together between missions and responsibilities. Luke showed her some basic meditation techniques, helping her connect with the Force in small ways. She wasn't as strong as him or his students, but she had some sensitivity, enough to feel the broad currents. Leia showed him the political side of the rebellion, the careful negotiations and supply arrangements that kept them alive. It was a side of the war he'd never seen, all the work that happened behind the scenes to support the fighters on the front lines. They argued too, passionately and often. Luke wanted to take more aggressive action against the Empire, to strike at major targets and force confrontations. Leia advocated for building support, for winning hearts and minds, for creating a political movement that could survive even if the military wing failed. Sometimes their arguments grew heated, both of them stubborn and certain they were right. But they always came back together, recognizing that they needed both approaches, that the rebellion needed fighters and diplomats working in concert. Their relationship became an open secret in the rebellion. Some approved, seeing it as a symbol of hope and humanity in dark times. Others worried it would compromise their judgment in the field. Admiral Akbar pulled Luke aside one day, his expression serious. "Your relationship with the princess could become a liability. If the Empire discovers it, they'll use it against you. Use her to manipulate you. I know. But I won't live in fear of what might happen. Shaak taught me that. The Empire wants us afraid, wants us isolated, wants us weak. Loving someone, caring about someone, that makes me stronger. Makes me remember what I am fighting for. Just be careful, young Skywalker. The galaxy is cruel to those who love in wartime." Luke knew Akbar was right, knew that loving Leia made him vulnerable in ways he'd never been before. But he refused to let fear dictate his choices. Refused to become his father, so desperate to avoid loss that he destroyed everything trying to prevent it. If he lost Leia, it would break him. But he would survive it. He would have to. Because the alternative, shutting himself off from connection and emotion like the old Jedi, that was a kind of death too. He continued his missions, but now he fought for something more than abstract justice. He fought for a galaxy where people like him and Leia could have a future together, where they could live without the Empire's shadow, where they could maybe someday find peace. That became his motivation. Stronger than revenge, stronger than duty. Love as fuel for action rather than a weakness to overcome. It was a philosophy Shaak had begun to teach him and Obi-Wan had refined. And it worked. Luke found himself more focused in combat, more determined, more willing to take calculated risks because he knew what he was risking them for. He led increasingly dangerous missions. A raid on an Imperial supply depot that was funneling weapons to a garrison preparing to put down a civilian uprising. Luke and his team destroyed the depot, crippling the garrison and saving thousands of lives. An infiltration of an Imperial intelligence office on Botha to steal codes and fleet deployment schedules. Luke used both Shaak boldness and Obi-Wan's subtlety, fighting when necessary and hiding when possible. Each mission honed his skills further, made him more confident, more capable. He was becoming the Jedi Shaak had envisioned, not constrained by the old order's rigidity, but not consumed by emotion either. Balanced. Other rebels started calling him by a new name, the Last Jedi. Luke hated it at first, felt it was disrespectful to Obi-Wan and the other survivors who might still be out there. But the name stuck, and eventually he accepted it. Maybe he wasn't the last Jedi, but he might be the first of a new kind. The first to walk the line between light and dark without falling to either extreme. Leia worried most of all. She'd heard about what happened on the Executor, about Shaak death and Vader's revelation. When her diplomatic duties brought her back to the Rebel fleet, she sought Luke out immediately. She found him in a training room, running through lightsaber forms alone, his movements sharp and angry. When he finally stopped, exhausted, she stepped forward. "You're going to hurt yourself if you keep pushing like this." He didn't look at her, deactivating his lightsaber. "I have to be ready. Next time I face Vader, I have to be strong enough to beat him." "And you think exhausting yourself will make you stronger?" "Luke, I've seen this before. My father, my adoptive father, he threw himself into his work after my mother died. He never stopped, never rested, never dealt with his grief. It nearly destroyed him. I don't have time to grieve. The Empire isn't going to stop because I'm sad. Every day I wait, more people die. More worlds suffer. If I'm not strong enough to stop Vader, to stop the Emperor, then what's the point of any of this?" Leia grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. The point is that you're still human, Luke. You're allowed to feel pain. You're allowed to mourn. If you turn yourself into a weapon, if you lose everything that makes you who you are, then even if you defeat Vader, you'll have lost. Something in her words broke through his defenses. Luke felt tears coming and tried to stop them, but Leia pulled him into a hug and he couldn't hold back anymore. He cried for Shaak, for his father, for the innocent boy he'd been on Tatooine who dreamed of adventure without understanding the cost. Leia held him through it all, not offering platitudes or solutions, just presence. When he finally pulled back, embarrassed, she smiled. Feel better? A little. Thank you. That's what friends are for. Though I have to admit, I was hoping we could be more than friends. The confession hung between them, and Luke felt his heart race. I wanted that too. But Shaak told me that attachments can make you stronger or weaker. And right now, I don't know if I'm strong enough to protect you if things go wrong. Then get stronger. And let me help you. I'm not some damsel who needs protecting, Luke. I can take care of myself. But we can take care of each other too. They kissed. And for a moment, the war and the pain and the loss all faded away. It was just two young people trying to find some light in the darkness. Their relationship became an open secret in the rebellion. Some approved, seeing it as a symbol of hope and humanity. Others worried it would compromise their judgment. But Luke found that Leia made him better. She challenged him when he became too aggressive, reminded him of the political realities he sometimes ignored, and kept him grounded when the Force threatened to pull him too far into abstract philosophy. And he did the same for her, reminding her that sometimes action was necessary, that not every problem could be solved with diplomacy, and that the Force could offer insights politics couldn't. They became partners in every sense, planning missions together, fighting side by side when necessary, and building a future neither could face alone. But that future was threatened by the shadow of Darth Vader. The Dark Lord had become obsessed with finding Luke, deploying vast resources to hunt him down. Probe droids scattered across rebel-held space. Inquisitors interrogated anyone who might have information. Star destroyers appeared without warning in systems where Luke had been spotted. Not to kill him, Luke realized through their occasional confrontations, but to turn him. Vader wanted a son by his side, wanted to reclaim some piece of the family he'd lost. The first real confrontation after the Executor came on Hoth. The rebellion had established a base on the frozen planet, hidden in the ice fields where sensors struggled to penetrate. It should have been safe. Should have been. But Vader deployed thousands of probe droids, blanketing entire sectors, and one of them found the base. The transmission was brief, barely a few seconds before the rebels destroyed the droid. But it was enough. Vader came with his full fleet, star destroyers emerging from hyperspace like dark omens. The evacuation began immediately. Rebel transports loaded with personnel and equipment, rushing to escape before the Empire could establish a blockade. Luke flew cover in his X-Wing, protecting the transports as they made their desperate run. But then he felt it. That presence in the Force, dark and oppressive, a weight that made the air itself feel heavy. Vader was here, not just in orbit, here on the surface, leading AT-AT walkers across the ice plains toward the base. Luke made a split-second decision. He broke formation, angling his X-Wing toward the approaching Imperial forces. His squadron leader shouted after him, demanding he return. But Luke didn't respond. He couldn't let Vader reach the base, couldn't let him slaughter the rebels still evacuating. This was his responsibility. his father, his fight. He landed his X-wing in the ice and ran toward the Imperial formation on foot, his lightsaber already in hand. The cold was brutal, worse than anything on Tatooine, but he pushed it aside, used the Force to warm himself, to keep moving. The AT-AT walkers loomed like mechanical monsters, their massive legs crushing the ice beneath them. Stormtroopers marched in formation between them, a sea of white armor advancing inexorably. Luke reached out with the Force, feeling for Vader's presence. There, in the lead walker. Luke ran toward it, dodging blaster fire from the stormtroopers who'd spotted him. His lightsaber deflected bolts back at their sources. A thermal detonator flew toward him, and he force-pushed it back, the explosion scattering a squad of troopers. He reached the walker and leaped, using the Force to enhance his jump to impossible heights. He landed on the walker's back, his lightsaber igniting as he plunged it into the armor. Metal screamed and melted. Luke cut through the hull, dropping into the walker's interior. Inside, crew members scrambled for weapons. Luke disarmed them with Force pushes, not killing, but incapacitating. Then Vader was there, having moved from the command deck to confront him. The walker's interior was cramped, barely room to fight, but they fought anyway. Vader's opening strike was brutal, an overhead slash meant to split Luke in half. Luke parried, barely, the impact sending vibrations up his arms. No preamble, no conversation, just violence. Luke responded with a Makashi lunge, precise and controlled, aiming for the gap in Vader's armor at his shoulder. The Dark Lord twisted aside, his cybernetic reflexes superhuman, and countered with a sweep that would have taken Luke's legs if he hadn't jumped. They dueled in the confined space, their blades painting the dim interior with red and blue light. Luke used his smaller size as an advantage, ducking under Vader's strikes, rolling past him, attacking from unexpected angles. But Vader's power was overwhelming. Each of his strikes carried enough force to dent the walker's interior walls when Luke dodged. The dark side radiated off him in waves, oppressive and suffocating. Luke felt himself being pushed back, his defenses faltering. Then Vader spoke, his mechanical voice somehow carrying emotion. "You've grown stronger, my son. Your training has continued. Good, but you're still not ready to face me." "I'm ready enough." Luke shot back, attacking with a flurry of Juyo strikes. The aggression pushed Vader back a step, the only time Luke had managed it. But the advantage was temporary. Vader planted his feet and met the assault with raw power, his blade smashing through Luke's offense and nearly disarming him. "You fight with anger. I can feel it. Use it. Let it make you strong." "I'm not angry," Luke lied, though he could feel the rage building in his chest. Rage at what Vader had done, what he'd become, what he'd destroyed. "You are, and you should be. The Jedi lied to you, told you to suppress your emotions, but your mother, your real mother, taught me better. She taught me that passion is strength, that love is power. Don't talk about her." Luke's control slipped, and he attacked recklessly. Exactly what Vader wanted. The Dark Lord caught Luke's blade and twisted, sending him stumbling. A force push slammed Luke into the walker's wall, and he felt ribs crack from the impact. Vader approached slowly, his blade at Luke's throat. "You're not ready. Not yet. Come with me. Let me complete your training, and together we can end this war. We can bring order to the galaxy. Never. Then you will die." But before Vader could strike, the walker rocked violently. One of the rebel cannons had scored a hit, crippling the walker's leg. The massive machine toppled, throwing both Vader and Luke off balance. Luke used the chaos to escape, cutting through the hull and force jumping clear as the walker crashed into the ice. He ran, Vader's presence pursuing him through the Force. But other AT-ATs were opening fire, and even Vader couldn't chase him and command the battle simultaneously. Luke made it back to the evacuation ships just as the last transport was lifting off. He jumped aboard, collapsing in the cargo hold, gasping for breath, his ribs screaming in pain. Leia was there, dropping to her knees beside him. What were you thinking? You could have died. Had to slow them down. Had to give everyone time to escape. Mission successful. She wanted to be angry, wanted to yell at him for the reckless risk. But she saw the pain in his eyes and pulled him into a careful embrace instead. Don't do that again. Don't make me watch you throw yourself at him. Promise me. I can't promise that. He's hunting me, Leia. Eventually I'll have to face him. Then let me be there when you do. You don't have to fight him alone. The transport jumped to hyperspace, leaving Hoth behind. But Luke knew this wasn't over. The encounters would continue. Vader wouldn't stop until Luke was turned or dead. The next confrontation came sooner than expected, just 2 weeks later, in the Anoat system. Luke was leading a supply convoy, 6 freighters full of medical supplies and ammunition heading for a rebel cell on Anoat. It should have been a routine run. Should have been. But Vader had anticipated it. His fleet emerged from hyperspace directly in their path, Star Destroyers forming a wall that blocked their escape. TIE fighters swarmed out, dozens of them, and the convoy's meager escort of X-Wings and Y-Wings stood no chance. Luke felt Vader's presence immediately, felt the Dark Lord's attention focus on him like a spotlight. This was a trap, specifically for him. He made the call immediately. Convoy, scatter. Jump to hyperspace on individual vectors. Don't try to fight, just run. I'll hold them off. The convoy ships began breaking formation, but the TIE fighters were already among them. Luke's X-Wing dove into the fray, his force-enhanced reflexes letting him dance through the enemy fire. He shot down TIE after TIE, his targeting computer barely needed when he could feel each ship's position through the Force. But there were too many. And Vader's personal TIE advanced, was cutting through the rebel fighters like they were standing still. Luke felt rebel pilots dying, their presences winking out in the Force one by one. The pain of it fueled his determination. He angled toward Vader's ship, engaging his comm. Father, this is between you and me. Let them go. Vader's response was immediate. No, they are rebels, enemies of the Empire. They will be destroyed unless you surrender yourself to me. Luke's hands tightened on the controls. He couldn't do that. Couldn't let Vader take him. But he couldn't let these people die either. He made a desperate gamble. He flew straight at Vader's ship, firing everything he had. Vader's TIE twisted through the barrage with impossible skill. But Luke wasn't trying to hit him. He was trying to get close enough for what came next. At the last moment before collision, Luke ejected from his X-Wing. The small escape pod shot clear as his fighters smashed into Vader's TIE in a fireball of twisted metal and burning fuel. Vader's ship spiraled, damaged but not destroyed, and Luke used the Force to guide his pod toward the nearest Star Destroyer's hangar. It was insane, suicidal, but it was also the last thing Vader would expect. Luke's pod crashed in the hangar, emergency system screaming. He kicked the door open and rolled out, lightsaber already igniting. Stormtroopers surrounded him, weapons raised. Luke didn't give them time to fire. He was a whirlwind, his blade flashing in arcs of blue light. Shaak Ti's training took over. Move constantly, never stay still. Use the Force to predict their aim and be somewhere else. He deflected bolts back at the shooters, dropped troopers with force pushes, closed distance, and struck with precise Makashi thrusts. The hangar became a battlefield, bodies falling around him, but more kept coming. Luke fought his way to the hangar's exit, leaving a trail of unconscious and injured stormtroopers behind him. He didn't kill unless he had to. Obi-Wan's teaching, the value of mercy, even in combat. But he incapacitated dozens, clearing a path into the Star Destroyer's corridors. Alarms blared, bulkhead doors sealed. The entire ship knew a Jedi was aboard and was mobilizing to stop him. Luke ran through the corridors, using the Force to sense patrol routes and avoid the heaviest concentrations of troops. But he wasn't trying to escape. He was hunting. Vader was on this ship, and if Luke could confront him, could keep him occupied, the convoy would have time to escape. He found Vader in the command deck, the Dark Lord having returned from his damaged tie and taken personal command of the pursuit. The crew members scrambled away as Luke entered, leaving the two of them alone. Vader's breathing was the only sound for a long moment. You destroyed your ship, sacrificed your escape. For them? For people who will die anyway. They're worth saving, every one of them. That's the difference between us. You see people as expendable. I see them as precious, a weakness. Love is not weakness. Luke ignited his lightsaber, and I'm going to prove it. They fought across the command deck, and this time Luke was more prepared. He started with Sore Su, pure defense, letting Vader attack while he analyzed the pattern. Vader's style was Form 5, Gen So, all about power and counterstrike. Every attack was meant to overwhelm defenses and create openings. But Sora Su was designed to counter exactly that. Luke's blade was always in the right place, minimal movement for maximum effect. He deflected rather than blocked, redirecting Vader's power rather than meeting it head-on. It frustrated the Dark Lord. Luke could feel it in the Force, Vader's anger building as his attacks failed to land. Good. Let him be frustrated. Let him make mistakes. Vader unleashed Force lightning, but Luke had trained for this. He absorbed it with his blade, the energy crackling harmlessly along the blade's length. Then he countered, switching from Sore Su to Makashi mid-combination. A precise thrust at Vader's respirator. The Dark Lord barely parried it, surprised by the sudden offense. Luke pressed the advantage, his blade seeking the gaps in Vader's armor. The shoulder joint, the knee, the respirator again. Each strike was calculated, precise, deadly if it landed. Vader had to retreat, had to actually give ground, and Luke felt a surge of triumph. He was doing it. He was actually matching his father. But then Vader roared, the sound mechanical and terrible, and unleashed his full power. The Force itself seemed to bend around him, a wave of pure dark side energy that sent Luke flying back. He crashed into a console, systems exploding around him. Vader advanced, his blade raised for a killing blow. Enough games, my son. You fight well, but you lack commitment. You won't kill me, even though you should. That hesitation makes you weak. You're wrong, Luke gasped, pulling himself up. Mercy isn't weakness, it's strength. It's choosing to be better than you have to be. Then be merciful and surrender. Come with me. Learn the dark side's power. Together we can overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy as father and son. How many times are you going to make that offer? How many times do I have to say no? Luke attacked again, desperation lending him speed. His Juyo came alive, fueled by righteous anger, and for a few moments he drove Vader back. But it wasn't enough. Vader's experience, his power, his willingness to use the dark side fully, it gave him an edge Luke couldn't match. A Force choke lifted Luke off his feet, cutting off his air. He struggled, tried to break free, but Vader's grip was iron. The Dark Lord brought Luke close, helmet to face. "I will ask one more time. Join me, or I will let you die here and hunt down every rebel you've ever cared for." Starting with the princess. Luke's vision was fading, black spots dancing at the edges. But at the mention of Leia, something ignited in him. Not dark side rage, but something else. Light side determination, a refusal to let Vader win. He reached out with the Force, not to attack Vader, but to sabotage the Star Destroyer itself. He felt the ship's systems through the Force, felt the complex web of power conduits and life support and engine controls. And he pulled. Pulled at critical junctions, pulled at safety systems, pulled at everything he could reach. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. Vader's concentration broke as he felt what Luke was doing, and his grip loosened just enough. Luke gasped air and intensified his sabotage. The Star Destroyer was dying around them, power failing, systems cascading into failure. Vader released him entirely, turning to try to salvage his ship. Luke didn't wait. He ran. The escape pods were launching automatically, crew members abandoning ship as it listed dangerously. Luke found one, jumped inside, and launched. As his pod shot away from the dying Star Destroyer, he looked back and saw Vader standing in the command deck's viewport, watching him go. Even from this distance, through the Force, Luke felt his father's emotions: frustration, respect, and something else: pride. Vader was proud of him. The thought made Luke sick. His pod was picked up by a rebel search and rescue ship hours later. The convoy had escaped. All 6 freighters and most of the escort fighters made it out. They'd lost pilots, too many pilots. But it could have been worse. Luke had saved them. But the victory felt hollow. He'd faced Vader twice now, twice had survived, but he hadn't won. Hadn't really hurt him, just delayed him. How long could he keep this up? How long before Vader finally caught him? Luke's answer was always the same. A lightsaber ignited and a refusal. "You killed Shaak Ti. You've killed thousands of Jedi. You serve a tyrant who's enslaved entire worlds. I'll never join you, never." But each encounter took its toll. Fighting his own father, even a father who'd become a monster, wore on Luke's soul. And Vader was impossibly strong. Every duel pushed Luke to his limits and beyond. He was getting better, learning from each fight. But so was Vader. The Dark Lord seemed to be studying him, learning his techniques, adapting his own style to counter Luke's strengths. It was like fighting a dark mirror of himself, one with decades more experience and power enhanced by cybernetic augmentation. The decisive confrontation came at Bespin, in the floating city of Cloud City. The rebellion had received intelligence about an Imperial operation there, something to do with carbonite freezing technology being tested for transport of prisoners. Admiral Akbar wanted to investigate, to determine if the Empire was planning mass deportations. Luke volunteered to lead the mission, and despite Leia's protests, he went. Something about the mission felt wrong to him. The intelligence had come too easily. The operation seemed too small to require investigation. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to go, that something important waited for him there. Obi-Wan warned him before he left. "I sense a trap, Luke. Vader is orchestrating this. You're walking into danger." "I know, but I have to go anyway. Sometimes you can't avoid the traps. Sometimes you have to spring them deliberately. Just promise me you'll be careful, that you won't let anger control you when you face him." "I promise, Master. I'll remember everything you've taught me. Everything Shaak Ti taught me. I won't fall." Luke's team arrived at Cloud City in a stolen Imperial shuttle, using forged codes to bypass security. The city was beautiful, a glittering jewel suspended in Bespen's clouds. But Luke felt nothing but dread as they approached. The Force was screaming warnings at him, danger signals blaring in his mind. But he pushed forward. His team infiltrated the carbon freezing facility in the industrial sector. It was a massive chamber, vast and echoing, with the freezing machinery dominating the center. And standing beside that machinery, waiting as if he'd expected them, was Darth Vader. Luke's team raised their weapons, but he stopped them with a gesture. "It's me he wants. Fall back to the shuttle. Get ready to extract me if this goes wrong." "Sir, we can't leave you alone with him." "Yes, you can. That's an order. Go." They retreated reluctantly, and Luke descended the stairs into the chamber, his hand on his lightsaber. Vader watched him come, motionless, his breathing the only sound. When Luke reached the chamber floor, Vader finally spoke. "I knew you would come. You couldn't resist the trap any more than I could resist setting it. You've made your choice then. You're going to try to take me by force. If I must, I would prefer you came willingly. Together we could end this war, bring order to chaos. I've shown you the power of your heritage. Why do you still resist? Because your order is tyranny. Your peace is slavery. I've seen what the Empire does. The worlds it destroys, the people it crushes. I'll never be part of that." "Then you are a fool. Like your mother was a fool. Like the Jedi were fools. They all believed in something better, and where did it get them? Dead. Every one of them dead. My mother believed in you, and you killed her for it." The words were like a blade, and Luke felt Vader flinch through the Force. That wound was still raw, even after all these years. "No. Palpatine killed her. He manipulated me, turned me against everything I loved, and when I realized the truth, it was too late. I am a prisoner of this armor, of this life. But you could be free. Join me. Help me overthrow the Emperor. Together we can rule, make things right, honor your mother's memory." By what? Becoming tyrants ourselves? That's not what she would have wanted. How would you know what she wanted? You never knew her. And whose fault is that? Luke's anger was building. The old rage at his father's choices, at everything Vader had destroyed. Shaak Ti taught me that anger could be a tool. So did you, though you didn't mean to. Every time I think about what you've done, I get angry. And that anger makes me stronger. But it doesn't control me. That's the difference between us. I use my emotions. You're used by yours. Vader's hands clenched into fists. You know nothing of my emotions, nothing of my pain. Then show me. Help me understand. Or are you too much of a coward? The insult stung Vader's pride, exactly as Luke intended. The Dark Lord ignited his lightsaber, the red blade casting shadows across the chamber. "Very well. If you will not join me, I will break you. And when you are broken, you will beg to learn from me." Luke ignited his own blade, blue light answering red. "Then come. Let's end this." The fight began with Vader's opening slash, a brutal overhead strike meant to split Luke in half. Luke sidestepped, his Makashi training guiding him, and countered with a precise thrust at Vader's knee joint. The Dark Lord parried, barely, surprised by how much faster Luke had become. They'd fought before, but this time was different. Luke wasn't just surviving, he was competing. Their blades met in a shower of sparks, and they began to circle each other. The carbon freezing chamber became their arena, their movements echoing in the vast space. Luke started with Soresu, pure defense, analyzing Vader's pattern. The Dark Lord attacked relentlessly, his Form 5 power trying to overwhelm Luke's guard. But Luke's blade was always there, always in the right position, deflecting and redirecting. He could feel Vader's frustration growing with each failed strike. Then Luke switched forms mid-combat. A trick Shaak Ti had drilled into him endlessly. From Sorasu to Makashi, from defense to precision offense. His blade suddenly sought targets, thrust at gaps in Vader's armor, forced the Dark Lord to defend. Vader adjusted, meeting Luke's precision with raw power. But Luke was ready for that too. From Makashi to Ataru, using the chamber's catwalks and platforms to his advantage. He force-jumped to higher ground, attacked from above, kept Vader off balance with constant movement. The Dark Lord followed, his cybernetic legs carrying him up the platforms with mechanical precision. But Luke was faster, more agile. He led Vader on a chase through the chamber's upper levels, striking and retreating, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned down. Vader began to anticipate this, started predicting where Luke would go next. On a narrow catwalk, he cut off Luke's escape and forced a direct confrontation. Luke switched to Juyo, channeling his emotion into aggressive strikes. He thought of Shaak Ti falling, thought of his mother dying, thought of every person the Empire had killed, and he poured all that into his attacks. Vader found himself being driven back, actually giving ground, as Luke's blade seemed to be everywhere at once. "You fight like your father," Vader said, a strange tone in his mechanical voice. "Like Anakin fought, with passion and power. You could be even greater than he was. I am greater than he was. Because I know when to stop. Because I won't let my power consume me like he did. You say that now. But wait until you lose someone you love. Wait until you watch them die and know you could have prevented it with just a little more power. Then you'll understand why I fell. I've already lost someone I love. Master Shaak Ti died because of you. And yes, I wanted more power, wanted to be strong enough to save her. But I didn't let that want destroy me. That's what makes me different. That's what makes me better." The words struck deeper than any blade could. Vader's attacks became more aggressive, more emotional, as Luke's accusations hit the raw wound of his guilt. The Dark Lord unleashed a flurry of strikes that drove Luke back to the chamber's center, back toward the carbon-freezing platform. You know nothing of loss, nothing of pain, nothing of what it means to sacrifice everything and still fail. Then show me. Share your pain with me through the Force. Let me understand. Why would I do that? Because I'm your son. And part of you wants me to understand. Wants someone to know why you fell. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep trying to turn me. You'd just kill me. Vader hesitated, his blade lowering slightly. Luke seized the moment. He reached out with the Force, not to attack, but to connect. He touched Vader's mind gently, the way Obi-Wan had taught him, and felt the maelstrom of emotion there. Grief for Padme, rage at Palpatine, self-loathing for his choices, fear of being alone forever, pain from the constant agony of his suit. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of darkness and suffering that nearly dragged Luke under. But he held on, let himself feel it without being consumed. "I see it. I see your pain, and I'm sorry. Sorry for what happened to you. Sorry for what you lost. But this isn't the answer. Serving the Emperor, terrorizing the galaxy. It's not honoring my mother's memory. It's spitting on it. You want to make things right? Then stop. Stop serving him. Stop hurting people. Come back to the light. It's not too late." Vader jerked back as if burned, severing the connection. You don't understand. The dark side has me. Even if I wanted to return, I can't. Palpatine's hold is too strong. Then I'll help you break it. Together, we can defeat him. But not by becoming like him, by being better. No. The word was final, absolute. Vader raised his hand, and Luke felt the Force close around his throat. I have tried reason. I have tried persuasion. Now I will try pain. Luke was lifted off his feet, gasping for air, but he didn't fight the Force choke. Instead, he reached out again with the Force, this time not to Vader's mind, but to his heart, to the tiny spark of Anakin Skywalker that still remained. He pushed all of his compassion, all of his hope, all of his love for the father he'd never known toward that spark. And he felt it respond, felt it grow brighter for just a moment. Vader's grip faltered. The Dark Lord staggered as if struck, his breathing labored even through the respirator. What are you doing? Stop, I can feel him. Anakin Skywalker. He's still in there, buried under all your pain and anger. He's still fighting you, still trying to be good. You haven't killed him. You've just imprisoned him. No, Anakin is dead. I killed him. Luke dropped to his feet as Vader's concentration broke entirely. The Dark Lord clutched his helmet as if in physical pain. I am Vader. Only Vader. Nothing remains of what I was. You're wrong. I can prove it. Luke deactivated his lightsaber and clipped it to his belt. Then he spread his arms, defenseless. If Anakin is truly dead, then kill me. I'm unarmed, helpless. The dark side demands you strike down your enemies. So do it. Prove that you're nothing but Vader. Prove that my father is gone. Vader's blade trembled in his hand. He raised it, prepared to strike. But he couldn't. Something held him back, some remnant of the man he'd been. Luke saw it, felt it through the Force, and pressed harder. You can't do it. Because somewhere inside that armor is a man who loved my mother, who wanted to free the slaves, who fought for the Republic. He's still there, still fighting. And I won't give up on him, even if you have. Vader's blade lowered. For a long moment, the only sound was his mechanical breathing. Then he spoke, his voice softer than Luke had ever heard it. Your mother, Padme. Tell me about her. You knew her. You loved her. What do you want me to tell you? What she was like at the end? Did she hate me? Luke felt tears prickling his eyes. I never knew her. She died when I was born. But Obi-Wan told me about her. He said she was strong, brave, kind, that she believed in people even when they disappointed her, that she loved you until the very end. Even after everything you'd done, she still loved you. The words broke something in Vader. He stumbled back, his breathing ragged. She died because of me, because I chose power over love, because I let fear control me. Yes, but you can still honor her memory. You can still choose to be better. It's not too late. Before Vader could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Imperial soldiers poured in, followed by the Emperor's royal guards. And between them, dragged in chains, was Leia. Luke's heart stopped. Vader had anticipated everything, prepared contingencies upon contingencies. If he couldn't turn Luke through philosophy, he'd use the most powerful tool he had: love. Vader's voice was cold again. The moment of vulnerability passed. A demonstration, my son. You say attachment makes you stronger? Let's test that. Join me, or watch her suffer. Luke's mind raced. This was exactly what his father had faced. A choice between power and love. Between doing what was right and protecting what mattered. Anakin had chosen wrong, had let fear drive him to darkness. Luke wouldn't make the same mistake. He looked at Leia, saw the fear in her eyes, but also the trust. She believed in him. believed he would find a way, and he would, but not through darkness. Let her go. This is between you and me. She's innocent. Vader gestured, and Leia rose into the air, clutching at her throat as an invisible grip closed around it. No one is innocent in war. Everyone makes choices. Everyone suffers consequences. Now choose. Join me, and I release her. Refuse, and she dies. Luke, don't. Leia gasped out. Don't give in to him. I'm not worth it. You're worth everything. But so is the galaxy. Luke turned to Vader, his eyes blazing. You want to know what attachment really means? What it means to love someone without being consumed by it? I'll show you. He closed his eyes and reached out through the Force. Not to attack, not to defend, but to connect. He touched Leia's mind, flooding it with reassurance and love. Told her without words that everything would be all right, that he had a plan, that he trusted her to be strong. Then he touched Vader's mind again, pushing past the dark side's barriers, finding that spark of Anakin. And he spoke to both of them simultaneously. Attachment isn't about possession. It's not about controlling people or preventing loss. It's about caring for someone so much that you want them to be free and happy, even if that means letting them go. My father couldn't let go of my mother, and it destroyed them both. I won't make that mistake. If Leia dies today, I'll grieve, I'll hurt, but I'll survive. And I'll keep fighting because that's what she would want. That's what love actually means. Sacrifice without regret. Care without condition. Vader's grip on Leia loosened, his confusion evident. Luke pressed on. You wanted to save my mother by gaining power. But power can't prevent death. It can only delay it, and that delay costs everything else. The Jedi were wrong to forbid attachment, but you were wrong to let it control you. The balance is loving without desperation, caring without fear. And I've found that balance. That's why I'm stronger than both the old Jedi and the Sith. Vader released Leia entirely, and she dropped to the ground, gasping. The Dark Lord stood motionless, his internal conflict radiating through the Force. Luke had reached him again, touched that spark of light, and it was growing brighter. The Emperor's guards moved forward, sensing their master's prey slipping away, but Vader raised a hand to stop them. He took a step toward Luke, his blade still ignited but lowered. You speak of balance, of finding a middle path. But I am too far gone. The dark side has corrupted me beyond redemption. Then let me help you back. Luke extended his hand, an offer and a plea. I'm your son. Let me be your salvation like you tried to be my mother's. Together, we can break Palpatine's hold. Together, we can end this war and build something better. For the first time in 19 years, since he'd been sealed in this armor of agony, Vader allowed himself to hope, to believe that redemption might be possible. His hand reached out, trembling toward Luke's. Their fingers were inches apart when the hologram activated. The Emperor appeared in flickering blue light, his ancient face twisted with fury. Lord Vader, I sense you wavering. I sense the light touching you again. Do not forget your place. Do not forget what I have given you. Power. Purpose. Palpatine's voice was insidious, a hook in Vader's mind. You were weak as Anakin, ruled by fear and love. I made you strong. I gave you the power you craved. Would you throw that away for sentiment? Luke felt Vader's conflict intensify. The Emperor's hold was strong, decades of manipulation and dark side conditioning. But the spark of Anakin was fighting back, brighter now than it had been in years. Luke made his choice. He reached out with the Force, not to Vader this time, but to the Emperor himself. Through the hologram's connection, he touched Palpatine's mind and showed him something. Showed him the vision he'd had weeks ago, the one he hadn't understood. Vader and Luke fighting side by side against a common enemy. The Emperor saw it too and understood its implication. Vader might turn, might betray him. The hologram flickered out as Palpatine severed the connection and alarms began blaring throughout Cloud City. The Emperor was coming, sending his full power to stop this before it went further. Vader stood frozen, torn between two masters. The dark side he'd served for decades and the son who offered him salvation. Luke spoke urgently. "Father, please, we don't have much time. The Emperor is coming, and if you're still his servant when he arrives, this chance is lost forever. Choose, not for power, not for fear, for what's right, for my mother's memory, for the galaxy, for yourself." Vader's breathing was labored, his internal conflict reaching a crescendo. Then he made his decision. He turned to the Imperial guards and soldiers. "Leave, all of you, now." "But my lord, the Emperor commanded us to secure the Jedi. I am commanding you to leave, now." The guards hesitated, torn between Vader's authority and the Emperor's orders. But Vader's presence in the Force was overwhelming. They retreated. Once alone, Vader turned back to Luke and Leia. "Go. Take your princess and escape. I will hold off the Emperor's forces when they arrive." "You're letting us go? Why?" "Because you're right. I have been a prisoner. Of this armor, of my choices, of my pain. But today, for the first time, I choose differently. I choose hope." The emotion in his mechanical voice was palpable. Luke felt tears streaming down his face. "Come with us, please. We can face the Emperor together." "No, I'm not ready for that. Not yet. I have much to atone for, and I don't know if redemption is possible for me. But I can start by letting you go, by not making you into what I became. That's enough for now. Go before I change my mind, before the darkness overwhelms me again." Luke wanted to argue, wanted to drag his father bodily out of Cloud City and away from the Emperor's influence. But he understood. Vader needed time, needed to process this change. Pushing too hard might break him entirely. "All right, but this isn't over. I'll find you again. And next time, you're going to help me end this war the right way. We'll see." Vader's tone was softer than Luke had ever heard it. "Goodbye, my son. May the Force be with you. And also with you, Father." Luke helped Leia to her feet, and they ran from the chamber together. Behind them, Vader watched them go, his hand still trembling from where he'd almost touched his son. The choice was made, but implementing it would be harder. Years of dark side conditioning wouldn't disappear overnight. But for the first time since Mustafar, Darth Vader allowed himself to believe that change was possible. Luke and Leia reached their shuttle and launched just as Imperial reinforcements arrived. TIE fighters swarmed, but Vader's command to let them go filtered through the Imperial forces, creating confusion that allowed their escape. As they jumped to hyperspace, Leia turned to Luke. "What happened back there? Why did he let us go?" "I reached him, reached the man he used to be, and he chose to let me live instead of serving the Emperor. It's a start, just a start. But maybe there's hope for him after all." Leia was quiet for a moment. "You're playing a dangerous game, Luke, trying to redeem Darth Vader. He's killed thousands, millions maybe. I know. But he's also my father. And if there's even a chance he can come back to the light, don't I have to try? For his sake, for my mother's sake, for my own sake." She took his hand. Just be careful. Don't let your hope blind you to reality. If he can't be saved, you might have to be the one to stop him. I know. I hope it doesn't come to that. But I'm prepared for it if it does. The shuttle carried them back to the rebel fleet, and news of the Cloud City incident spread quickly. Many rebels were troubled that Luke had confronted Vader alone and survived. Some suspected he'd made a deal, betrayed the rebellion. Admiral Akbar called him in for debriefing, and Luke told him everything. About the confrontation, about reaching Vader's light side, about the choice his father had made. The Admiral was skeptical. You're telling me Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, showed you mercy out of paternal affection? Yes. And more than that. I think he's questioning his loyalty to Palpatine. This could be the opening we need, or it could be a trap to make you lower your guard. Either way, you've now drawn the Emperor's direct attention. That makes you, and all of us, much more vulnerable. I understand the risk, but I believe this is worth it. If Vader turns, if he helps us defeat the Emperor, this war could end. We'll see. For now, consider yourself confined to base. No more solo missions. No more confronting Vader alone. That's an order. Luke accepted the restriction, knowing it was the price of his gamble. But he didn't regret what he'd done. He'd seen the spark in his father grow brighter, seen the possibility of redemption, and he would nurture that possibility, no matter what it cost. They clashed in the center of the chamber, and immediately Luke knew this was different from their previous encounters. Vader was fighting seriously now, not testing or probing, but actively trying to overwhelm him. His attacks came faster and heavier than ever before, each strike forcing Luke to give ground. Luke used everything Shaak Ti and Obi-Wan had taught him. He switched between forms mid-combat, keeping Vader off balance. When Vader expected Makashi precision, Luke gave him Juyo fury. When Vader anticipated aggression, Luke fell back into Soresu defense. He used the environment, force-pushing freezing machinery at Vader, creating clouds of steam to obscure vision, even bringing down part of the ceiling to create obstacles. But Vader adapted to everything. He was like fighting the Force itself, an unstoppable tide that couldn't be turned aside. A heavy slash drove Luke back against the carbonite platform. A force push sent him stumbling. When Luke tried to create distance, Vader closed it with terrifying speed. They fought across the chamber, their blades painting light across the darkness, neither gaining a decisive advantage. Then Vader changed tactics. Instead of trying to overpower Luke, he began targeting his emotions. Your master died. Because she was weak. She clung to a failed philosophy. Join me, and I'll teach you real power. The words ignited Luke's anger, exactly as Vader intended. Luke's attacks became more aggressive, more furious, and in his rage, he overextended. Vader's blade swept low, cutting through Luke's defenses and severing his right hand at the wrist. Luke screamed, his lightsaber tumbling into the abyss below, clutching his cauterized stump. Vader approached slowly, his breathing loud in the sudden silence. It is done. You are beaten. Surrender, and I will teach you. Together, we will destroy the Emperor and rule the galaxy. Father and son. Luke looked up at him, pain and defiance warring in his eyes. I'll never turn. I'm a Jedi like my father before me. Then perhaps you need more convincing. Vader gestured, and Imperial soldiers dragged in prisoners. Leia, the sight of her, bound and struggling, made Luke's blood run cold. Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. On the contrary, she has everything to do with this. Join me or watch her suffer. Vader's hand extended, and Leia rose into the air, clutching at her throat. Luke felt her fear through the Force, felt her desperation, and something inside him broke. The dark side whispered to him, offering power, offering a way to save her. All he had to do was give in, to use his hate, to strike Vader down with everything he had. The temptation was overwhelming, but then he remembered Shaak Ti's teachings. Feel your emotions, use them, but never let them use you. He remembered Obi-Wan's lessons. Love without possession, fear without paralysis. And he remembered Leia's words. If you turn yourself into a weapon, you'll have lost. Luke took a deep breath and centered himself in the Force. When he spoke, his voice was calm. No. Vader's grip on Leia tightened. What? I said no. I won't join you, and I won't let you turn me. You can kill me. You can kill her. But you can't make me fall. Luke reached out with the Force, not in anger, but in compassion. He touched Vader's mind, pushing past the darkness, searching for any remnant of Anakin Skywalker. And he found it, buried deep, crushed under years of pain and hatred. There was a tiny spark of light. The man who'd loved Padme, the boy who'd wanted to free all the slaves, the Jedi who'd fought to protect the Republic. Luke grabbed onto that spark and pulled. Vader staggered, his grip on Leia faltering. What are you doing? Stop. I can feel him. I can feel my father buried inside you. He's still there. You haven't killed him completely. Vader released Leia, clutching his helmet as if in pain. No. Anakin Skywalker is dead. He's not. He's right there, fighting you, hating what you've become. You killed Padme. You killed the Jedi. You've spent years serving the Emperor who destroyed everything you ever loved. But it's not too late. You can still choose to be better. For a moment. Just a moment. Vader hesitated. His hand trembled as he looked at Luke. Really looked at him and saw not an enemy, but his son. The son he'd never known he had. The son who was giving him a choice he'd thought lost forever. But then the Emperor's voice crackled over the comlink. Lord Vader, is the boy secured? The sound snapped Vader back to darkness. He straightened, his moment of weakness passing. I am sorry, my son, but it is too late for me. He gestured, and Imperial soldiers moved to take Luke into custody. But Leia had used the distraction to free herself. She grabbed a blaster from a fallen soldier and opened fire, creating chaos in the chamber. Rebel forces burst through the doors, having tracked Luke's location. In the confusion, Leia grabbed Luke and they ran. Vader could have pursued them, could have slaughtered every rebel in the facility. But he stood frozen, Luke's words echoing in his mind. Anakin Skywalker is not dead. He let them go. Luke and Leia escaped Cloud City, rejoining the rebel fleet. But something had changed. Luke's hand had been replaced with a cybernetic prosthetic, a constant reminder of how close he'd come to falling. But more importantly, he'd faced Vader and hadn't given in to darkness. He'd offered his father redemption and for a moment seen him waver. It wasn't a victory in the traditional sense, but it was something. Hope. The rebellion celebrated their survival. But Luke knew the war was far from over. The Emperor was still out there, still orchestrating the Empire's expansion. Vader was still hunting him, still trying to either turn or destroy him. And somewhere in the galaxy, other Force sensitives were awakening, sensing the shift in the Force, as Luke blazed a new path between the light and dark. Obi-Wan found him on the observation deck of the Rebel flagship, staring out at the stars. You did well, Luke. Better than I could have hoped. I didn't beat him. I know. But you didn't fall either. It's a victory in itself. And you planted a seed of doubt in Vader's mind. That may grow into something greater. Do you really think he can be saved? I don't know. But I have to try. He's my father. Obi-Wan placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. Shaak Ti would be proud of you. She taught you to fight, and you've become a formidable warrior. But you've also learned when not to fight, and that's the mark of a true Jedi. The two stood in silence, watching the stars, as the rebellion prepared for its next move. Luke knew there would be more battles ahead, more losses, more difficult choices. But he wasn't the scared boy from Tatooine anymore. He was a Jedi, trained by two masters with opposing philosophies, shaped by loss and love, and determined to forge a new path forward. Not the old order's path of detachment and passivity, not the Sith path of hatred and domination. Something new, something balanced. Leia joined them on the observation deck, taking Luke's hand in hers. Admiral Akbar is planning an assault on an Imperial shipyard. He wants to know if you'll lead the fighter squadron. Luke squeezed her hand, feeling the connection between them through the Force. Tell him yes, but we do it my way. No unnecessary casualties. We disable, we don't destroy. We give people a chance to surrender. She smiled. Very Jedi of you. He smiled back. I learned from the best, both of them. As they walked back into the ship together, planning their next mission, the Force seemed to shimmer around them with possibility. The war wasn't over. The Empire still held most of the galaxy in its grip. Vader still hunted him. The Emperor still plotted from his throne. But Luke Skywalker, trained by Shaak Ti to fight and by Obi-Wan to think, loved by Leia Organa and supported by the rebellion, was ready to face whatever came next. Years would pass. Battles would be won and lost. But after Cloud City, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Luke Skywalker was no longer just a rebel operative or a Jedi in training. He'd become a symbol, hope made manifest. The man who'd faced Darth Vader multiple times and survived. The Jedi who fought with passion but without falling to darkness. The warrior who saved lives rather than just taking them. His reputation spread across the galaxy, whispered in cantinas on 1,000 worlds. The last Jedi, they called him. The one who would restore balance to the Force. Luke still hated that title, but he'd learned to accept the weight that came with it. The months following Cloud City were intense. The Emperor, furious at Vader's hesitation and Luke's escape, launched a massive campaign to crush the rebellion. Star Destroyers appeared in system after system, hunting for rebel bases. Inquisitors scoured the galaxy for Force sensitives with renewed fervor. The Empire's grip tightened like a closing fist. But the rebellion adapted, scattered, survived. And Luke was at the heart of that survival. He led missions across the Outer Rim, rescuing the oppressed and striking at Imperial targets. On Ord Mantell, he liberated a forced labor camp where prisoners were mining cortosis for Imperial armor. On Kashyyyk, he helped Wookiee freedom fighters ambush an Imperial garrison and reclaim their sacred forests. On Lothal, he evacuated civilians before an Imperial purge, saving thousands of lives. Each mission honed his skills further, made him more confident, more capable. He was becoming the Jedi Shaak Ti had envisioned, but tempered by Obi-Wan's wisdom. Not just a warrior, but a leader. Not just powerful, but wise. He continued training Force sensitives, building something that wasn't quite the old Jedi Order, but served a similar purpose. Luminara, the Mirialan woman he'd rescued from Wobani, became his first true student. She was older than him by a few years, which made the dynamic strange at first. But she had a hunger to learn that reminded him of himself. Luke taught her everything he knew. Shaak Ti's aggressive combat forms and philosophy of using emotion as strength. Obi-Wan's defensive techniques and emphasis on inner peace. The first, balance between action and reflection. The importance of fighting for something rather than just fighting. Luminara absorbed it all, her natural talent blooming under his instruction. She constructed her own lightsaber, the crystal calling to her from a crystal cave on Dantooine, where Luke had found his own. Her blade burned green, and she wielded it with a grace that was distinctly her own. Not copying Luke's style, but developing something personal. That pleased him. The old Jedi had tried to make everyone fit the same mold. Luke wanted his students to find their own paths. 2 other students joined them. A young Zabrak named Jax, who'd been hiding his Force sensitivity his whole life, terrified the Inquisitors would find him. And Maris, a human girl barely 14, who'd watched her Force-sensitive parents executed by stormtroopers and swore vengeance. Luke taught them combat, yes, but also philosophy. They meditated together in the mornings, discussing the nature of the Force, the balance between light and dark, the responsibility that came with power. He taught them that anger wasn't inherently wrong, but it needed direction. That fear was natural, but it shouldn't control them. That love and attachment could be strengths if approached correctly. The philosophical discussions often went late into the night, all 4 of them debating the old Jedi code versus the Sith code versus this new middle path Luke was forging. Maris struggled with it the most. She wanted revenge for her parents, wanted to hurt the Empire as it had hurt her. Luke understood that impulse intimately. I felt the same way about Vader. I wanted him dead for killing Shaak, for what he'd become. And that desire made me stronger in some ways. But it also made me reckless. You have to ask yourself, what do you want more? Revenge or justice? Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making the galaxy better. The two aren't always the same. Maris took time to process that, to work through her grief and anger. Luke gave her that time, remembering how Obi-Wan had done the same for him. Eventually, she found a kind of peace, not forgetting her parents, but honoring them by fighting for a better future rather than just destroying the past. Jax had different struggles. He'd spent so long hiding his abilities, suppressing them, that he found it hard to embrace them now. Using the Force felt wrong to him, dangerous. Luke worked with him on acceptance, on understanding that power itself was neutral. What mattered was how you used it. Training these students helped Luke process his own experiences. Teaching forced him to articulate what he'd learned, to examine his beliefs critically. And it kept Shaak Ti's legacy alive. Every time he taught Makashi's precision or Juyo's passion, he felt her presence. Every time he pushed his students past their limits and they discovered they were stronger than they thought, he heard her voice. You are capable of more than you know. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Obi-Wan visited occasionally, appearing on whatever world Luke was currently operating from. The old Jedi had become even more reclusive, spending most of his time meditating and communing with the Force. But he made time for Luke, continuing to refine his teaching. They discussed philosophy, debated the nature of the Force, and Obi-Wan shared stories of the Old Order. Not to convince Luke to recreate it, but to help him understand what had worked and what had failed. The Council's mistake was thinking they could eliminate darkness by forbidding it. They treated the dark side like a disease to be quarantined rather than a temptation to be resisted. That made them brittle, unable to bend when darkness called to them. Your approach, teaching students to acknowledge their darker emotions but not be ruled by them, that has more wisdom than the old ways ever did. During one visit, Obi-Wan gave Luke a datachron, an ancient Jedi artifact containing holocrons of past masters. These are for you and your students, the wisdom of those who came before. Not all of it is correct. Much of it is outdated. But there's value in understanding where we came from, even as we forge a new path. Luke accessed the Datacron with his students, and they spent weeks studying the teachings within. They saw the Jedi at their height, guardians of peace and justice. But they also saw the gradual ossification, the growing rigidity, the fatal blindness to the darkness growing in their midst. It was a cautionary tale. Luke vowed his new order would never become so comfortable, so certain, that they missed the obvious threats. They would remain engaged with the galaxy, fighting on the front lines, seeing the consequences of their choices firsthand. No more ivory towers, no more detachment. Jedi as servants of the people, not distant guardians. That was the vision Shaak had died for, and Luke would make it real. His relationship with Leia deepened over this time. They spent what time they could together between missions and responsibilities. She taught him about politics, about the careful dance of alliances and compromises that kept the rebellion functioning. He taught her about the Force, helped her develop her own nascent abilities. Leia wasn't strong enough to become a Jedi, but she had enough sensitivity to enhance her natural leadership gifts. She learned to sense deception, to project calm in tense negotiations, to inspire loyalty through the Force without even realizing she was doing it. They talked about the future, about what they wanted when the war finally ended. Leia dreamed of rebuilding the Republic, but better this time, with stronger safeguards against tyranny, with systems to prevent another Palpatine from rising. Luke shared his vision of a new Jedi Order, integrated with the Republic, but not subservient to it. Jedi as helpers and protectors, not generals and politicians. Sometimes they argued about it. Leia worried that independent Jedi could become vigilantes, accountable to no one. Luke worried that government-controlled Jedi would repeat the mistakes of the Clone Wars. But they always found common ground, always compromised. That's what made their relationship work. Neither trying to control the other, but both willing to listen and adapt. Their love grew deeper, more certain, and eventually Luke asked her to marry him. Not in some grand romantic gesture, but quietly, during a supply run to a rebel outpost on Rune. They were sitting in the cockpit of his shuttle, watching the stars, and he just said it. I want to spend my life with you. After this war, if we both survive, I want to build something together. Will you marry me? Leia smiled, tears in her eyes. You're supposed to kneel. Present a ring. Make it romantic. I'm a Jedi, not a poet. Also, we're in a war zone and I don't have a ring. But I love you, and I want you to know that. So will you? Yes. Obviously, yes. You ridiculous, wonderful man. They married in secret, with only Obi-Wan and Luke's students as witnesses. It was a small ceremony on Dantooine, under the stars, with Obi-Wan officiating. No grand celebration, no political alliance. Just two people who loved each other, making a commitment in the face of an uncertain future. Obi-Wan blessed their union with words from the ancient Jedi traditions, adapted for this new understanding. May the Force bind you together. May your love make you strong without making you possessive. May you support each other without losing yourselves. And may you build a future worthy of those who fought for it. The war continued. Luke and Leia fought side by side when they could, apart when they must. And always, in the background, was the question of Vader. Luke had felt his father's presence in the Force change after Cloud City. The darkness was still there, but it was churning, conflicted. Vader was questioning his path, perhaps for the first time since Mustafar. Luke tried to reach out to him through the Force, sending messages of hope and encouragement. Sometimes he felt a response, a flicker of light acknowledging him. Other times, there was only silence. They didn't meet in person again for over a year. Both were busy with the war. But when they finally encountered each other again, it was on neutral ground. Abandoned space station in the Outer Rim, where both had gone following different intelligence leads. They found themselves in the station's central hub, alone, their forces left behind. The moment hung in tension. Would they fight? Would they talk? Luke made the first move. He didn't ignite his lightsaber, just stood there, open and vulnerable. "Hello, Father. I'm glad to see you again." "Luke." Vader's voice carried conflict. "I should kill you. I should take you to the Emperor and let him break you. But I cannot." "Why not?" "Because you are my son. Because every time I try to hurt you, I hear your mother's voice. Because I am tired. So tired of causing pain. Then stop. Help me end this war. Together we can defeat Palpatine, restore freedom to the galaxy, honor my mother's memory." You make it sound simple. It's not. Palpatine's power is immense, and my crimes, they cannot be undone. Too many have died by my hand. Redemption is impossible for one such as me. It's not impossible. Difficult, yes. It will require you to face what you've done, to accept the weight of your guilt. But it's not impossible. I believe in you, Father. I believe the man who loved my mother is still in there, still fighting. And I'll help you if you let me. Vader was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What would you have me do?" "Start by telling me everything. Who Palpatine really is, what his plans are, where his power comes from. Help me understand what we're fighting against. And then, when the time is right, stand with me against him." Vader hesitated, decades of conditioning warring with the growing light in his soul. Finally, he began to talk. He told Luke about Palpatine's true identity as Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord who'd manipulated the entire Clone Wars, about his plans for immortality through dark side rituals, about the secret facilities where he conducted horrific experiments, about the Death Star, a battle station under construction that could destroy entire planets. Luke listened, horror growing with each revelation. But he also felt hope. His father was confiding in him, trusting him. That was progress. When Vader finished, Luke thanked him. "This information will help the rebellion immensely. We can strike at his facilities, disrupt his plans, and when the time comes, we'll face him together. I'm not ready for that. Not yet, I know. But you're moving in the right direction. That's all I ask. Keep moving. Keep questioning. And when you're ready, I'll be here." They parted after that, each returning to their separate wars. But something had fundamentally shifted. Vader was no longer fully the Emperor's servant. He was a man torn between two paths, and Luke had given him a vision of what the right path might look like. The intelligence Vader provided proved invaluable. The rebellion struck at several Imperial facilities, disrupting research programs and freeing prisoners. They learned about the Death Star project and began planning how to counter it. And Luke continued his work, training more Jedi, leading more missions, building the foundation for a new order. Obi-Wan's health began to fail. The old Jedi was aging rapidly, his body giving out after years of stress and exile. Luke visited him as often as he could, and during one visit, Obi-Wan made a request. "When I die, Luke, and I will die soon, I want you to know I'm proud of you. You've become more than I ever hoped. You've taken the best of the old ways and the wisdom to forge something new. Continue that work. Build your order." And when the time comes to face the Emperor, remember that you don't have to do it alone. You have your students, your wife, and yes, even your father. Use every resource, every ally. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. I will, Master, I promise. Obi-Wan smiled. Good. Also, there's something you should know about the Force, about what happens after death. The old Jedi believed we became one with the Force, losing our individuality. But that's not entirely true. With proper training, we can maintain our consciousness, become Force ghosts. I've been learning how, through meditation and communion with those who came before. When I die, I won't truly be gone. I'll be with you, guiding you when you need me. That's a comfort. But I'd rather you didn't die at all. We all die, Luke. It's the one certainty in life. But death isn't the end. Remember that when you face your darkest moments. Remember that those you've lost are still with you, in the Force, cheering you on. Obi-Wan passed away peacefully in his sleep a week later. Luke felt it through the Force, felt his master's presence shift from physical to spiritual. And true to his word, Obi-Wan appeared to him that night as a shimmering blue form. I told you death wasn't the end. Luke laughed through his tears. So you did. Will I see you again? Whenever you need me. I'll be watching over you, Luke. You and your students. Now go. Live fully. Fight bravely. Love deeply. And know that I'm proud to have trained you. The years passed. Luke turned to 25, then 30. His students grew in skill and wisdom, became teachers themselves, training their own students. The small group of 4 became a dozen, then 2 dozen, then more. Not in order in the old sense, but a network of Force users dedicated to protecting the innocent and fighting tyranny. They didn't have a temple. They moved from world to world, going where they were needed. They married, had families, lived full lives while still serving the Force. It was everything the old Jedi hadn't been: organic, flexible, human. Luke's reputation continued to grow. He was there when the rebellion discovered the second Death Star under construction. He led the strike team that stole the plans. He rallied rebel cells across the galaxy to prepare for a final confrontation with the Empire. And through it all, he maintained contact with Vader, slowly drawing his father back toward the light. Their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes they fought, old habits dying hard. But more often they talked about Padme, about Anakin's fall, about what kind of galaxy they wanted to build. Vader shared more intelligence, sabotaged Imperial operations subtly, walked a dangerous tightrope between serving the Emperor and betraying him. The day finally came when the rebellion decided to strike. The Emperor would be aboard the second Death Star personally, overseeing its final construction. It was a trap they knew. He wanted to lure the rebel fleet in and destroy them. But it was also an opportunity. If they could kill the Emperor, the war would effectively end. The Empire would fracture without his unifying force. Luke volunteered to go aboard the Death Star to confront the Emperor directly. It was suicide, everyone said. No one could defeat Palpatine in single combat. But Luke had no intention of fighting alone. He sent a message to Vader through the Force. It's time, Father. Time to make your choice. Stand with the Emperor and watch the galaxy burn, or stand with me and build something better. Vader's response came hours later. I will be there, my son, and I will stand with you, whatever it costs. The final battle began with the rebel fleet engaging the Imperial forces around the Death Star. Explosions lit up the space around the massive battle station as fighters danced and capital ships traded fire. Luke flew his X-Wing through the chaos, heading for the Death Star's hangar. He landed among Imperial ships, stormtroopers immediately converging on him. But Vader was there too, having prepared for this. He stood between Luke and the stormtroopers, his red blade ignited. "Stand down. The boy is mine." The troopers hesitated, confused, but Vader's authority was absolute. They retreated. Luke approached his father, and for the first time, they stood side by side rather than opposed. "Ready?" Vader asked, his voice carrying an emotion Luke had never heard before. Fear, determination, hope. "Ready. Let's end this. Together." Together, they walked through the Death Star's corridors toward the throne room where Palpatine waited. They could feel the Emperor's presence, dark and terrible, a vortex of malice that seemed to warp reality around it. This would be the fight of their lives. Luke thought of everyone who'd brought him to this moment. Shaak, who'd taught him to fight with passion. Obi-Wan, who taught him to think with wisdom. Leia, who taught him to love without fear. His students, who taught him that legacy mattered. And Vader, his father, who taught him that redemption was always possible, if you had the courage to seek it. The throne room doors opened, and Palpatine's laughter echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, young Skywalker, and Lord Vader. I wondered when you would finally betray me. Come then. Let us see if love and hope can stand against the power of the dark side." Luke and Vader ignited their lightsabers, blue and red, side by side. And the final battle began. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.